Chapter 545. After the heavenly god palace arrived, the Ing family and the Mani temple arrived as well. Now, the 5 supreme sects invited by Ting Qingshan had all arrived. Sovereign Pei, everyone, I will go and worship the heavens and earth. Ting Qingshan cupped his hands and parted with the group of emptiness realm experts. At this moment, over 2,000 people were standing neatly on the plaza in front of the Xing Yi sect's Great Hall. The person in the lead was Ting Qingshan, and behind him were Ting Shou, Yang Dong, and Xuexen. Behind these 3 great disciples were the 98 third-generation disciples and all the people of Tingjia village. From the day Ting Qingshan created the Xing Yi sect, all the people of Tingjia village became members of the Xing Yi sect. Music! Ting Qingshan shouted coldly. Suddenly, the heavy sound of the bell rang out in the square. The sound of the bell was so heavy that it seemed to be pounding on the hearts of the people, shaking their souls. The entire plaza seemed to tremble. When the 81 bell rings ended, the sound of drumming began. For a moment, the entire plaza was filled with the sound of drumming. After a long time, the drumming stopped. Sacrifice! Ting Qingshan shouted coldly. Immediately, burly men of almost the same height, wearing red cloth strips on their heads and topless, carried giant trays. On the trays there was a whole roasted cow, a whole roasted lamb, and all kinds of fruits and pastries. There were a lot of offerings, and a total of 81 burly men carried them up to the altar. Ting Qingshan took 3 incense sticks from the priest and said loudly, "Kneel!" Rumble, over 2,000 people knelt down in unison. Everyone was respectful and didn't dare to make a sound. They stared at the huge cauldron in front of them. Even the arrogant Pei San and the others of the heavenly god palace quieted down. There were many people in the plaza, but not a single noise could be heard. Heaven above, today. The priest, standing beside Ting Qingshan, began reciting the sacrificial rites. His voice reverberated in the air. Ting Qingshan held the incense sticks and looked at the huge cauldron in front of him while listening to the rites. After a long time, the priest finished reading. "Light the incense," the priest shouted. Everyone was kneeling. Only Ting Qingshan stood up. He respectfully walked to the front of the cauldron and inserted 3 incense sticks into the cauldron. Then, Ting Qingshan retreated and knelt down again. Yes. At Ting Qingshan's command, everyone knelt down. After the 3 kneeling and 9 kowtows ceremony. Then, he brought the sacrificial offerings to the fireplace that had been prepared beforehand and burned them all. It was a sign that heaven and earth had eaten it. Finally, the music was played again. When the drumming stopped, the ceremony was officially over. Qingshan, after you worship the heavens and inform the heavens, from now on, the Xing Yi sect will be officially established, Pei San said with a smile. Ting Qingshan smiled and shook his head in his heart. Due to the influence of his previous life, he didn't really believe in worshipping the heavens and deities. However, in the land of the 9 prefectures, even the proud and aloof Pei San followed the rules when worshipping the heavens. Almost everyone in the land of the 9 prefectures attached great importance to worshipping the heavens. Therefore, Ting Qingshan had to follow the rules and complete everything. On the day of the establishment of the sect, all the guests of the Xing Yi sect gathered at the ceremony to congratulate the establishment of the sect. After drinking, the representatives of the 5 supreme sects came to a quiet living room. These 5 representatives were Pei San of the Heavenly God Palace, Ing Haidong of the Ing family, Wu Luo of the Snow Hawk Hall, Fan Kong of the Mani Temple, and Ting Qingshan. Although the sovereign of the Guiyuan sect was Zhuge Yuanhong, the Guiyuan sect didn't have an emptiness realm expert. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to control the entire prefecture. In the eyes of the supreme sects, the leader of the Guiyuan sect was Ting Qingshan. "Brother Qingshan, you should know why we are here," Ing Haidong said with a wry smile. "This time, you spread the secret manual of the tiger form fist art. Billions of people in the world obtained this set of fist technique. Once they succeeded in practicing it, they would be able to cultivate it. I'm afraid that most of them will come to the Xingyi sect. As time passes, the land of the 9 prefectures will become the territory of the Xingyi sect to select disciples. Tell me, what should we, the sects, do? This is also the first time we have encountered such a thing. The black-robed old man from Snowhawk Hall laughed. Only Ting Qingshan could do this kind of thing. No one else could learn it even if they wanted to. Qingshan, tell me, what do you want to do? Pei San asked with a faint smile. The white-browed old monk, Fan Kong, also looked at Ting Qingshan. The meaning of these 4 parties was very clear. They were not fools. It was impossible for them to watch Ting Qingshan do this. Although the people of the world were secretly learning the internal martial art, the various sects couldn't forcefully stop them. However, there were ways to weaken the influence. They could even work together to suppress the Xingyi sect. Everyone. Ting Qingshan smiled and shook his head. The Xingyi sect is short on manpower. We are not a threat to you at all. We will be a threat in the future, Pei San said with a smile. Ting Qingshan nodded and said, I am very confident in the branch of the internal martial art. However, I, Ting Qingshan, as the founder of the Xingyi sect, can swear that the Xingyi sect will not fight for hegemony in the world. We will only stay in the 5 counties of Yangzhou. Outside of these 5 counties, the Xingyi sect will not occupy another county. Not fight for hegemony. The leaders of the 4 feudal vassals were shocked. The reason why they didn't fight for hegemony was because they knew that it would be difficult for them to do so. For example, the Wanxiang sect was not strong. That was why they chose to walk this path. Perhaps they had accumulated a lot of strength over the years. However, they could never fight for hegemony in the world. If they did that, they would incur the wrath of the people in the world. However, the Xingyi sect was different. Ting Qingshan's potential was limitless. In the future, he might become an omnipotent expert and unify the world. Even if Ting Qingshan could not reach the level of Emperor Yu, it would not be difficult for him to reach the level of Hong Tian, the king of the northeast. Why did Ting Qingshan block this path? The land of 5 counties is enough. Ting Qingshan smiled and said, Everyone, don't worry. I will not fight for hegemony. I will make this the first rule of the Xingyi sect. Moreover, I will announce this rule to the world soon so that everyone in the world knows about it. Everyone, if this is the case, you should all be relieved. Moreover, the cultivation of the internal martial art is very strict. Only 1 in 100 people can succeed. Ting Qingshan shook his head and said, Even if this fist art spreads, it will not affect the foundation of your sections. Pei San, Ing Haidong, and the others looked at each other and smiled. Only 1 in 100 people could succeed. Such a strict requirement, in their opinion, the number of internal martial art cultivators in the land of the 9 prefectures was definitely more than that of the Taoist sects. The number of Buddhist sects was much less. This would not affect their foundation. In addition, the Xingyi sect would publicly announce that they would not fight for hegemony in the land of the 9 prefectures. Just like the Wanxiang sect. That way, there would be no threat at all. After all, once this was announced to the world, no one would dare to disobey. Otherwise, they would be besieged by the world. Moreover, the hearts of the people in their own sects would be unstable. How would you know what I am thinking? Ting Qingshan laughed inwardly. The internal martial art is different from the Buddhist sect and the Taoist sects. As long as one has some achievements in the cultivation, even if it is only small success, one's physical strength should be at least 3,000 to 4,000 jin. As for the meridians, the small success of the internal martial art. Even if the meridians were not completely opened, they would at least be partially opened. Once I switch to cultivating the secret inner strength technique, I will soon have a more vigorous inner strength. Just like when Ting Qingshan and Ting Qinghu cultivated the vigor of the reckless bull. Although Ting Qinghu had only reached small success in the internal martial art, he could still reach small success in the vigor of the reckless bull. Physical strength of several thousand gene and inner strength of several thousand gene. I can reach the explosive force of 10,000 gene. That is the level of a first-rated warrior. Ting Qingshan thought inwardly. This was the advantage of the internal martial art. But the combination of physical strength and inner strength. The small success of the internal martial art can be compared to a first-rated warrior. If the achievement is higher and most of the meridians are opened, like the vigor of the reckless bull, one can cultivate to the 7th or 8th level in one go. With the combination of physical strength and inner strength, one can have the explosive force of tens of thousands of gene. Ting Qingshan was very confident. There are 200 to 300 million people in Yangzhou. Within these 200 to 300 million people, I can cultivate millions of internal martial art experts. Millions of internal martial art experts. The lower level would be second-rated warriors. Normally, they would be first-rated warriors. In other words, the Xingyi sect can easily form an army of more than 100,000 first-rated warriors. Ting Qingshan had thought of this long ago. However, Ting Qingshan also knew, if the branch of internal martial art is too powerful, it will lead to internal division. Just like how the Taoist sect split into many sects, if the branch of internal martial art is ambitious, it will also split into many sections. Therefore, the best solution is to simply give up the Xingyi sect's ambition to become the world's hegemon. Without the ambition, the Xingyi sect is extremely powerful. Then, it will naturally become a transcendent holy land. Without the ambition, even if there were some ambitious people in the Xingyi sect, they would not be able to use the Xingyi sect. After all, firstly, the martial ancestor had left a message. Secondly, he had announced it to the world. Thirdly, the entire Xingyi sect recognized this. By that time, the Xingyi sect would be the undisputed number one sect in the world. It would become a holy land that surpassed the other sects in the land of the 9 prefectures. Although it would not be a hegemon, no other force in the land of the 9 prefectures could compete with it. However, all of this will take time. I still need a large number of secret manuals of internal martial art. Ting Qingshan thought to himself. There was still a long way to go. Ting Qingshan, the martial ancestor, had to work hard for everything. When the Xingyi sect appeared in the land of the 9 prefectures, in the depths of the desolate land in the distant south. Haha, it's finally done. It's finally done. A hoarse voice sounded. A grey-cloaked man with a hideous scar on his face could be seen dashing southwards like a beam of light. After experiencing the death of his son, the extermination of his sect, and the disfigurement of his own face, Gu Yong finally comprehended the last obstacle and reached the emptiness realm. The speed of an emptiness realm expert was astonishing. After an unknown period of time, whoosh! His face was covered with scars, but his cold eyes stared at the forest in front of him. In the forest, especially on the trees, there were many houses. These houses were built on the branches of the trees. All kinds of conversations could be heard. The number of savages here was unprecedentedly high. Moreover, every one of the savages here was at least 1 zhang, 5 meters, tall. They were like giants. Some of them were even taller. This is it. I'm finally here. Gu Yong thought to himself. 5 chapters were completed. The 10th chapter, a feudal lord, was completed. The next chapter would be the 11th chapter. Please give your monthly votes and recommendation votes to Tomato if you have a vote. Clicking on the recommend monthly votes to support author would do. Voting would make Tomato very motivated. Tomato needs everyone's support. Everyone, are you not going to vote? Chapter 546. The East Flower Garden of the Xingyi sect was where Ting Qingshan and Li Jun lived. Qingshan. Zhuge Yuanhong hurriedly walked into the East Flower Garden. He immediately saw 2 people sitting at a stone table not far away, Ting Qingshan and his grandfather, Ting Yunlong. Sovereign Zhuge. Ting Yunlong laughed and stood up, cupping his hands. Uncle Ting. Zhuge Yuanhong also cupped his hands and smiled. He immediately looked at Ting Qingshan and said anxiously, Qingshan, I just heard. The Xing Yi sect will never conquer the world? Why are you so muddle-headed? If you announce this to the world, won't your descendants have to hide in the 5 counties forever? Teacher. Ting Qingshan smiled and shook his head. I have my own thoughts. You sigh. Zhuge Yuanhong shook his head and sighed. You told me before that the Xing Yi sect will follow the path of the Wanxiang sect. However, you don't have to announce it to the world. Won't you block the way? Announcing it to the world was not a joke. It was the same as being monitored by the people of the world. If the Xing Yi sect tried to expand its territory, it would go against the will of the people and be laughed at by the world. If the army of the Xing Yi sect went on an expedition, it would be unreasonable. The morale would be low and the sect would be unstable. There would be no chance to expand. Teacher. Ting Qingshan shook his head. Why do we want to conquer the world? Whether it's Heavenly Emperor Qin Ling or Emperor Yu, they can only conquer the world for a while. When they die, the world will still fall apart. When they conquer the world, there will be countless casualties. When the world is divided, there will be countless casualties. This unification will lead to division. This is not good for the world. It is not good for the sect. Why bother to unify the world? Ting Qingshan looked to the south and said, Martial ancestor Shiga saw it clearly. After he reached the omnipotent realm, he created many secret scriptures of the Buddhism sect. He also made the Buddhism sect spread throughout Rongzhou and Liangzhou. He made the people of Rongzhou and Liangzhou absolutely loyal to the Mani Temple. This is the way to prosperity. The influence of religion on people was astonishing. Qingshan, the Xing Yi sect is not the Mani Temple. It is not a religion. Zhuge Yuanhong shook his head and said, in his opinion, even if the Xing Yi sect did not fight for hegemony in the world, there was no need for the Xing Yi sect to announce it to the world. Only then would there be room for negotiation. Alright, that's enough. Zhuge Yuanhong knew that it was too late to say anything now. Ting Qingshan smiled and didn't say anything. He just thought to himself, 10 or 20 years later, he would see the Xing Yi sect. Only the people of the world would know the uniqueness of the internal martial art. Uncle Ting, what are you writing? Zhuge Yuanhong walked to Ting Yunlong's side. Ting Yunlong stood in front of the stone table and pointed at the name list on the table. He smiled and said, the people of Tingjia village are also disciples of the Xing Yi sect. Therefore, together with Qingshan, we added Tingjia village's name list to the Xing Yi sect's name list. The main thing is to divide the 2nd-generation disciples and the 3rd-generation disciples. Zhuge Yuanhong nodded and said, that's right. It is very troublesome. Ting Yunlong sighed and said, when Qingshan was young, he created the tiger form fist art. It became the secret fist art of Tingjia village. It was only taught to males and not females. Most of the males in the village have practiced it. Now we have to divide them into the 2nd-generation disciples and the 3rd-generation disciples. It is really difficult. Ting Qingshan nodded and said with a smile, for example, Uncle Yonglei and the others are my elders. Qinghu is of the same generation as me. As for the Hong generation, they are my juniors. It is obvious that they belong to 3 generations, but they have to be placed among the 2nd and 3rd-generation disciples. It is indeed difficult. As a sect, there was no doubt that the founder of the sect was the 1st-generation disciple. As for the 1st generation, only the founder of the sect was qualified to be listed. Otherwise, why would he be called the founder? Therefore, in Tingjia village, even if the generation was higher than Ting Qingshan, as long as they practiced the internal martial arts, they would at most be the 2nd-generation disciples. There were also many people who were listed as the 3rd-generation disciples. Qinghu is a second-generation disciple? Zhuge Yuanhong looked at the name list in surprise. Yes, Qinghu was one of the first batch of people who practiced the tiger form fist art and developed inner strength. Ting Yunlong said with a smile. He still remembered the scene of a group of men learning fist art from the young Ting Qingshan. At that time, how could he have imagined that a young man from the village could actually become the founder of the sect? Teacher, Ting Qingshan looked at Zhuge Yuanhong apologetically and said, asking Qinghu and the others to leave the black armored corps, this matter. You and I are master and disciple, why are you talking so much? Qingshan, you have helped the Guiyuan sect too much. If it weren't for you, Qinghu Island would have already destroyed the Guiyuan sect. In the sect, I just asked the 10 people from the Tingjia village to leave and join the Xingyi sect, Zhuge Yuanhong said with a smile. Actually, Zhuge Yuanhong felt that he owed Ting Qingshan a lot. In terms of kindness, he really didn't teach Ting Qingshan anything. The internal martial arts was unique to Ting Qingshan. On the contrary, the Guiyuan sect had received a lot from Ting Qingshan. Last time, when Ting Qingshan wanted to establish a sect, many elders were extremely angry. This made Zhuge Yuanhong feel guilty. As the sovereign of the Guiyuan sect, he had to think for the sake of the Guiyuan sect. However, he also knew that Ting Qingshan had done enough for the Guiyuan sect. Teacher, Ting Qingshan said with a smile, the Guiyuan sect will gradually move to Yong, a county in the west. When the time comes, the Guiyuan sect will be in Yong County, while the Xingyi sect will be in the Great Yen Mountain. The distance between the two places will be very far, so I can't stay in Yong, County all the time. However, teacher, don't worry. I will arrange this well. Although Ting Qingshan was the sovereign of the Xingyi sect, most of the internal affairs of the Xingyi sect were handled by his second disciple, Yang Dong. As for Ting Qingshan himself, besides cultivating, he would accompany his wife, Li Jun. According to the doctor, little June, don't go out these 2 days. The baby could be born at any time. Ting Qingshan held Li Jun's hand and took a walk in the East Flower Garden. It's okay. Li Jun smiled carelessly. By the way, Qingshan, will the Heavenly God Palace, the Ying family, and the Mani Temple be at ease if the Xingyi sect doesn't fight for hegemony? According to what Qingshan said, I finally understand. If the internal martial art cultivators continue to develop in this way, it will be very scary in the future. Will the Heavenly God Palace and the others just watch us grow stronger? Of course not. Ting Qingshan shook his head. However, the Heavenly God Palace and the Mani Temple only have a vague understanding of the internal martial art. They don't know that even if they have a small achievement in the internal martial art, then they will cultivate the secret inner strength technique. If they work together, they will definitely reach the level of a second-rated warrior. If they have a high achievement, they will reach the level of a first-rated warrior. Some of the elites are even qualified to be ranked in the Earth ranking. They don't know. That's why they are at ease. When they find out how scary the internal martial art is, they will definitely take action. Ting Qingshan was very clear about this. However, when they find out about this, they will definitely be internal martial art cultivators. Many of them will have a small achievement. Many of them will have a small achievement. By that time, it will probably be several years later. The Xingyi sect has developed the fastest in the past few years. In the past few years, we can recruit people quickly. When they find out about this, we will suppress them. The foundation of the Xingyi sect has already been established. Ting Qingshan smiled. What can they do to me? After all, they all agreed to it. Ting Qingshan was bullying the other sects because they didn't know much about the internal martial art. The problem now is that there are too few teachers who can teach the disciples. Ting Qingshan shook his head helplessly. Fortunately, there are many people in the Tingjia village who are proficient in the tiger form fist art. After a few years, the young disciples of the third generation will also have experience. They will be able to teach the disciples who have just entered the sect. If teacher Zhuge Yuanhong didn't mention the matter of establishing a sect, if his master, Zhuge Yuanhong, had not mentioned the matter of establishing a sect. Originally, Ting Qingshan didn't want to be in a hurry. Now it was better. Although the sect would expand rapidly in the beginning, it would be much busier. However, the Xingyi sect would also become stronger earlier. Ah! Li Jun suddenly covered her abdomen. What's wrong, Li Jun? Ting Qingshan saw Li Jun's expression and immediately guessed the problem. Maybe I'm about to give birth. Li Jun's forehead was covered in sweat as she hastily said. Hold on for a while. I'll call people immediately. Ting Qingshan immediately used the sound transmission technique to inform the doctors, midwives, and the others who were already prepared. With the sound transmission technique, a group of people living in the lower courtyard of the East Flower Garden immediately picked up various tools and came over. After a while, in the East Flower Garden outside the wing room, a group of people gathered. Ting Yongfan, Yuan Lan, and Qingyu, who had been living here for the past few days, also rushed over. More than 10 people gathered outside. Quick! Come in with hot water. The female disciple who was holding the hot water in the distance also knew martial arts. She held the wooden basin of hot water and dashed towards the wing room as light as a swallow. However, Ting Qingshan was outside the wing room. He kept pacing back and forth as he muttered something. Haha, Qingshan, don't go. You are also the leader of a sect. Calm down and sit down. Ting Yongfan laughed. Ting Qingshan glanced at his father. Calm down? His state of mind, which had been tempered by life and death situations for a long time, could not be stabilized at this moment. Yongfan, don't talk about Qingshan. Ting Yunlong laughed. When Alan gave birth to Qingshan, you were even more anxious than Qingshan. I am different from him. Ting Yongfan laughed. I am also a blacksmith. Qingshan is the sovereign. When it comes to this matter, there is no difference between the sovereign and the blacksmith, Ting Yunlong said with a smile. Just when there was laughter outside the wing room. Boom! In the hot summer, a sudden clap of thunder made Ting Qingshan's heart tremble. He couldn't help but look up at the sky and saw that it was gray. In just a short while, raindrops the size of beans came crashing down. This rainstorm came without warning, causing the group of people who were originally outside the wing room to immediately rush into the corridor. This rainstorm comes so quickly. It doesn't rain early or late. The baby is about to give birth, and it rains. Ting Yunlong and the group of people looked up at the sky. At this moment, the sky and the earth were already covered with a curtain of rain. The rainstorm smashed everywhere. I think Qingshan's baby is not ordinary. It rains at this time. Ting Yongfan and the group of people discussed happily. On the other hand, Ting Qingshan was even more anxious and confused. Pa. The rainstorm continued. Rumble, there was a faint sound of thunder in the clouds in the sky. The rain became heavier. Wah! The high-pitched cry of a baby suddenly rang out. Ting Qingshan suddenly stood still and stared at the door of the wing room. Chapter 1 to Chapter 11, 20 Years of Wind and Cloud begins. Chapter 547. She gave birth, she gave birth. In the corridor, Ting Yunlong, Ting Yongfan, Yuan Lan, Qingyu, and the others were all excited and expectant. Ting Qingshan stared at the door without blinking. Creak! The door opened and a wave of hot air filled the air. The midwife walked out with a wrapped baby. Congratulations, sovereign. The midwife was a bit reserved in front of Ting Qingshan. She's a daughter. A girl? Ting Yongfan widened his eyes, and Yuan Lan glared at him with dissatisfaction. It was normal for rural people to value boys more than girls. After all, girls would marry outside the village in the future. This was also the reason why Tingjia village set the rule that the tiger form fist art was only taught to males and not females. However, Ting Qingshan didn't care about this. Give it to me. Ting Qingshan held the baby with even more care than when he took the dreamy cloud white fruit and the grass of immortality. Her eyes are dark. Ting Qingshan held his own flesh and felt that it was very magical. The crying baby gradually became softer at this moment. His pair of small eyes stared at Ting Qingshan, as if there was something about this giant in front of him that attracted him. She probably didn't understand the meaning of being a father. So magical. Holding his daughter, Ting Qingshan felt that he was connected to the baby girl. Yes, it was the feeling of being connected by blood. Her body has my, Ting Qingshan's, bloodline. Ting Qingshan looked at the baby girl in his arms and thought to himself, in the future, she will pass my bloodline to her child. Her child will also continue to pass my bloodline on. Everyone's life has its limit. No one can live forever. However, the heavens have a way to pass this bloodline on forever. His daughter's bloodline was connected by blood. Suddenly, Ting Qingshan understood what was the true meaning of endless growth and multiplying. Sometimes, even if one understood some things, they wouldn't understand it unless they experienced it themselves. It's like this. Ting Qingshan was holding the baby girl in one hand, and his other hand was subconsciously performing a fist technique. Qingshan! He suddenly shouted. Ting Qingshan was shocked and woke up. He turned around and saw that it was his father, Ting Yongfan. Ting Qingshan glared at him and said angrily, "You're practicing martial arts while holding a baby? What if the baby falls or gets hurt?" As he spoke, Yuan Lan immediately took the baby girl from Ting Qingshan's arms. Wah! The baby was so frightened that he began to cry. Oh. Good boy, don't cry. Yuan Lan was coaxing the baby. Ting Qingshan couldn't help but scratch his head awkwardly when he saw his parents' expression. Actually, he had just touched the threshold of the wood elemental Tao that he had been searching for. He could not help but immerse himself in practicing his fist art. However, compared to his daughter's safety, it wouldn't be too late to study the wood element fist in the future. Although, he had missed a chance to gain enlightenment. At least, I understand the feeling. I found the threshold. Ting Qingshan already had a rough idea of the first move of the wood element fist. Voila! The originally pitter-pattering rainstorm gradually subsided. That's strange. When the baby was about to be born, the rain kept pouring. Now that the baby is born, the rain has subsided. Ting Yunlong raised his head and looked at the sky. He then turned around and looked at Ting Qingshan with a smile. Qingshan, it seems that your daughter is not ordinary. Yes, she is. Ting Qingshan added in his heart. Hugging her helped me break through the threshold of the wood elemental Tao. At this moment, creak! The door opened. Li Jun, whose face was slightly pale, actually walked out. Little Jun, Ting Qingshan hastily walked over. Li Jun smiled and shook her head. I'm fine. It's just that my body is slightly weak. However, it won't affect me much. After all, Li Jun was an innate expert. She had also taken the scarlet fruit wine. Little Jun, Yuan Lan smiled and handed the baby girl to Li Jun. Come, let mother give you a hug. Li Jun held the baby girl and smiled. Qingshan, have you decided on a name? Li Jun raised her head and looked at Ting Qingshan. They had thought a lot about the name of the child. Ting Qingshan looked at the baby girl and looked up at the sky. At this moment, the rain had almost stopped. This summer rainstorm came and went quickly. It was really not a lie. Since it was raining when she was born. Moreover, it helped me understand the wood elemental Tao. Then, this child shall be named Lin. The word rain above and the word wood below. The rain watered the forest, causing the trees to grow and multiply. Ting Qingshan immediately rejected the name he had thought of before and came up with this name, Ting Honglin, his daughter's name. Ting Honglin? Linlin? Li Jun nodded with satisfaction and looked down at the daughter in her arms. She smiled and said, Linlin, this is the name your father gave you. It sounds nice, right? At the side, Ting Qingshan couldn't help but whisper in Li Jun's ear, Little Jun, take good care of Linlin. I will go into seclusion first. I just had an epiphany. If it takes too long, I'm worried. Li Jun froze. Seclusion? Father went into seclusion as soon as the child was born? Okay, go. Li Jun also understood that it was best to comprehend the Tao at the moment of enlightenment. The longer it was delayed, the more vague the memory would be. After talking for a short while, Ting Qingshan's epiphany had weakened a lot. Whoosh! Ting Qingshan immediately left and rushed toward Ting Qingshan's secret room beside the East Flower Garden. Qingshan, where are you going? Ting Yongfan shouted because he didn't hear him. He is going to do something important, Li Jun said hastily. The child was just born. What could be more important than this? Ting Yongfan was slightly dissatisfied. Thereupon, on the first day that Ting Qingshan's daughter, Ting Qingshan, was born, Ting Qingshan went into seclusion to cultivate. The birth of Ting Qingshan's daughter was a happy event. In the next few days, many friends who were close to Ting Qingshan, whether they were from Tingjia village or Guiyuan sect, came to see Ting Qingshan's daughter. Many people came to give gifts to see Ting Qingshan's daughter. However, what surprised them was, Ting Qingshan, the father, was not here. Qingshan is really unreasonable. The child was just born, but he is already busy with his own business, many elders of Tingjia village said. On the 7th day of the child's birth, Li Jun was sitting by the pond. Beside her was a cradle, and in the cradle was a baby girl. Li Jun gently rocked the cradle and smiled at her daughter. The two maids beside her also smiled and chatted with Li Jun. Madam. Ting Shou and Yang Dong ran over. Li Jun looked at the two in confusion and asked, Ah Shou, why are you here? There are some matters. Just as Ting Shou opened his mouth, Yang Dong interrupted and said with a smile, Madam, has teacher come out of seclusion? Not yet. Li Jun shook her head. Yang Dong couldn't help but show a hint of anxiety, but he still said in a low voice, Madam, when teacher comes out, send someone to inform us. All right. I will tell your teacher. Li Jun nodded. Yang Dong immediately pulled Ting Shou and left. Madam, there seems to be something important, the slightly taller maid beside her said. Li Jun nodded and looked in the direction of Ting Qingshan's secret room. She couldn't help but feel anxious. Why hasn't he come out of seclusion after such a long time? Is he going to go into seclusion for a few months like he did in the forbidden area of Bright Moon Island? Li Jun could only endure and continue to take care of the child. When the sky gradually turned dark, a figure walked over from afar. Qingshan. Li Jun hastily stood up and her eyes lit up. I am really sorry for the past few days. Ting Qingshan walked over with a smile. He first lowered his head and looked at the baby girl in the cradle. He couldn't help but praise, Little Jun, Linlin is much more beautiful than when she was born. Look at that little face. That nose. Children grow the fastest at this stage. By the way, Qingshan, how was your seclusion in the past 7 days? Li Jun couldn't help but ask. Ting Qingshan bent down and carefully picked up his daughter. At the same time, he said, the 7 days of seclusion wasn't as effective as the enlightenment. I painstakingly pondered for 7 days and only created the first and second moves of the wood element fist. I couldn't create the third move no matter how hard I tried. It's a pity if I wasn't interrupted. If you weren't interrupted, would you have thrown Linlin away while practicing? Li Jun looked at Ting Qingshan angrily. Of course, Linlin is more important. Ting Qingshan frowned slightly. However, the Tao of the 5 elements. The 5 elemental Tao. I am the worst at it. This time, it was based on a trace of enlightenment from before and years of pondering. He had finally created 2 styles in one go. However, the 9 forms of the fist technique were the easiest at the beginning. The further you go, the harder it gets. Based on my current speed, I feel that I can comprehend the wood elemental Tao. It's 10 times slower than the fire elemental Tao and the earth elemental Tao, Ting Qingshan said helplessly. Even if Ting Qingshan practiced boxing in his previous life, even if he had studied the celestial jade annulus and the 36 splitting mountain forms, he would not be able to do so. However, in the end, it was impossible for him. The Tao of the 5 elements was easy for him. 10 times slower? How long will it take? Li Jun asked worriedly. Maybe. Ting Qingshan shook his head and said, take my water elemental Tao for example. If Pei San hadn't taught me to start with the Tao of life and death, I wouldn't have been able to cultivate the water elemental Tao. I'm afraid it'll take me another 2 or 3 years. As for the wood elemental Tao, it was already so difficult to cross the threshold. In the future, I'm afraid that creating a new style will be more difficult. Unless I have a few more epiphanies. Ting Qingshan grinned. Clearly, he was laughing at his own words. Epiphanies could only be encountered by chance. How could they be encountered so easily? That is to say, Qingshan, it will be very difficult to improve your strength in a short period of time? Li Jun asked. Yes. Ting Qingshan nodded. Currently, I control 80% of the power of the heavens and earth. Increase my physical strength. If I want to improve, I can only improve the wood elemental Tao. However, according to my estimations, it will take at least 10 or 20 years. It's not very possible for me to achieve mastery in the wood elemental Tao. Li Jun could not help but nod. On the path of comprehending the Tao, one has to be down to earth and take it one step at a time. Ting Qingshan smiled faintly. Now, my goal is to comprehend the wood elemental Tao. Then, I will succeed in all the 5 elemental Taos. Only then will I have the qualifications to work hard to enter the insightful emptiness realm. The further one went, the more difficult it would be. And now, Ting Qingshan had encountered the most difficult of the 5 elemental Taos. This is the 2nd chapter. There's still the 3rd chapter. I think 99% of people will not be able to guess what I'll write in the 3rd chapter. Chapter 548. Ever since Ting Qingshan established the Xing-Yi sect, the land of the 9 prefectures, which had been in constant conflict, suddenly quieted down. Even the heavenly god palace didn't make any big moves. For a time, the land of the 9 prefectures welcomed a period of peace. Time flew by. Spring and summer alternated year after year. 16 years later, in the county city of Wuhan County, in the Spring Rain Restaurant, a restaurant that could be found in almost every big county city in Yangzhou, it was currently noon. The first floor was filled with customers from all over the world who had gathered together, and the noise was unceasing. However, what was strange was that many of the customers in the tavern carried spears with them. The spear was a weapon that was very difficult to practice. In the land of the 9 prefectures, it was very unorthodox to use a spear. Most people carried swords and sabers. However, in this Spring Rain Restaurant, the number of guests who carried spears was much higher than those who carried swords and sabers. Haha, Brother Wang. The 2 of us can be thousands of li apart, yet come together and go to the same place. This is fate. Come, let's have a toast. Come, Brother Li, cheers. The 2 young men immediately clinked their wine glasses and downed the contents in one gulp. The 2 young men each carried a spear and placed it beside the table. One of the 2 young men wore a simple cloth robe with a piece of tiger skin on his waist. His hair was messy. As for the other young man, he was dressed in a green robe and appeared to be much more handsome and elegant. Brother Wang, come to think of it, we have arrived at Wuhan County. We are not far from the Great Yen Mountain. The young man in the green cloak smiled and said, we have traveled thousands of li, and we are almost at the Great Yen Mountain. It is said that the Xing-Yi sect in the Great Yen Mountain has hundreds of thousands of internal martial arts cultivators. The Blood Wolf Army. I can't wait to see it even in my dreams. Yes, the scene of hundreds of thousands of people practicing internal martial arts. The eyes of the young man in the tiger skin glowed as he said, I will be one of them. Yes, we will be one of them. The young man in the green cloak raised his cup again and said, Come, let's have a toast. Cheers. The young man in the tiger skin raised his head and drank another cup. Speaking of which, the tiger-skinned young man said hatefully, That third brother of mine really has no ambition at all. He practiced the tiger form fist, and his strength was quite impressive. In the past, I told my third brother that if I became stronger in the future, I would travel thousands of li to the Great Yen Mountain and become a disciple of the Xing-Yi sect. He had learned the profound internal martial art and became an expert of his generation. However, my third brother was actually attracted by the so-called benefits of Emperor Yu's Hall and actually joined Emperor Yu's Hall. The cultivator of the internal martial art had switched to the Taoist school. Even if he was powerful, it was only temporary. Your future achievements will be limited. Of course. The green-cloaked young man said, compared to the Xing-Yi sect, Emperor Yu's Hall is nothing. The 100,000 Blood Wolf soldiers of the Xing-Yi sect had the lowest entry requirement. They were all second-rated martial artists. It was said that only first-rated warriors would fight for the position of corporal. This was a truly invincible army. This time, when I go to the Xing-Yi sect, I must join the Blood Wolf army. Yes, Blood Wolf army, let's go in together. The young man with the tiger skin raised his wine cup and said, Come, brotherly. Let's drink to join the Blood Wolf army together. Cheers. The two hot-blooded young men had traveled thousands of li from other prefectures. The journey had been arduous. They had either joined a caravan as a guard or used other method. They had traveled all the way and finally arrived here. They only had one goal. They wanted to go to the holy land of all the cultivators of the internal martial art in the land of the 9 prefectures, the Xing-Yi sect of the Great Yen Mountain. You too. Suddenly, a voice rang out. With a bang, the table was slammed by a palm. The two young men who were drinking couldn't help but turn to look at the person who had just arrived. They saw a tall and muscular young man wearing a purple cloak. He carried a saber on his back and had a reserved look in his eyes. He scanned the two young men and sneered, When I came in just now, I heard the two of you saying, Emperor Yu's Hall is not as good as the Xing-Yi sect? You can't say such nonsense. What's wrong? The young man with the tiger skin suddenly stood up. He was slightly taller than his opponent. He stared at his opponent fiercely and shouted, We are talking here. It has nothing to do with you, pretty boy. Emperor Yu's Hall is powerful, but the Xing-Yi sect is a place for cultivators of the internal martial art. Who in the world can stop the 100,000 Blood Wolf army? The founder of the Xing-Yi sect was the youngest person to reach the emptiness realm in the history of the world. The eldest martial brother of the Xing-Yi sect is nicknamed Xiongshou. He is so young, but he is already ranked in the heavenly ranking. Although he is ranked at the bottom, how old is our eldest martial brother? And in just 16 years, the Xing-Yi sect has the most powerful Blood Wolf army in the land of the 9 prefectures. The green-cloaked young man glanced at the person who provoked him and said, Cultivating the internal martial art is the most promising path. The young man with the saber on his back smiled coldly and said, A sect with only 16 years of history and an emptiness realm expert dares to compete with the oldest sect, Emperor Yu's Hall, which was founded by the omnipotent expert Emperor Yu. If Emperor Yu's Hall is powerful enough, why would they still use small favors to let a large number of internal martial art cultivators join Emperor Yu's Hall? The young man with the tiger skin laughed strangely. Not long. Just 16 years. The Xing-Yi sect is stronger than Emperor Yu's Hall. This is called strength. Do you understand? The purple-cloaked young man with the saber on his back became even more furious. If you are so powerful, let's have a competition. The purple-cloaked young man was so angry that he immediately drew his saber. Let's have a competition. Who's afraid of who? The young man with the tiger skin suddenly grabbed the long spear beside the table. Customers, customers. The innkeeper saw that the situation was bad and immediately ran over. Get out of the way. If you break anything, I will compensate you. The purple-cloaked young man glared at the innkeeper. The innkeeper laughed and did not interfere. Immediately, the many customers who were originally eating in the restaurant began to cheer in fear of chaos. At the same time, they moved their tables away and watched the fight from the sidelines. It was forbidden to kill in the city, but it was fine to have a competition. Moreover, the real experts would run away after killing. The city guards came too late. Let me show you the mountain-breaking saber art of Emperor Yu's hall. The purple-cloaked young man held his saber and said coldly, with this spear art, we have only fought tigers and wild boars in the mountains. Country tricks. The young man with the tiger skin held his spear horizontally and said, Brotherly, watch to the side. Watch how I deal with this arrogant brat. Brotherly smiled and moved to the side. The two of them were guards in the same caravan and knew each other's strength. Brotherly had to admit that the spear art of the young man with the tiger skin, who only knew the country tricks, was slightly stronger than his. Make your move. The purple-cloaked young man said confidently. The young man with the tiger skin grinned and shouted, Watch my spear. As he spoke, he spun the great spear in his hand and attacked his opponent like a huge snake coming out of its hole. Clang! The purple-cloaked young man swung his saber like lightning. The spear and saber clashed. Humph! The young man with the tiger skin took a step back from the impact. He then squatted down and swept horizontally. The purple-cloaked young man leaped up as lightly as a swallow. Whoosh! The young man with the tiger skin lifted his long spear up. Break! 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 The purple-cloaked young man roared. The saber in his hand had a shocking aura. As he dived down, he slashed 3 times. The first slash broke the long spear, and the second slash reached the front of the young man with the tiger skin. The young man hastily threw the long spear in his hand, and the long spear smashed forward. At the same time, a fierce look appeared on his face as he leaped up like a ferocious tiger. Clang! After the second slash broke the long spear, the third slash slashed towards the young man with the tiger skin. The body of the young man with the tiger skin twisted strangely. He wanted to defeat his opponent at the risk of getting injured. Chi! The long spear that suddenly stretched out blocked the third saber strike. Clang! After the third slash was blocked, the purple-cloaked young man dodged the claw attack of the young man with the tiger skin. He then sneered and said, You said that the Xing-Yi sect is stronger than Emperor Yu's hall. I think you are about the same age as me. If that guy didn't shamelessly interfere, you would have been crippled even if you didn't die. Humph! If I'm crippled, you will die. The young man with the tiger skin was like a ferocious tiger. The close combat of the internal martial art was famous in the land of the 9 prefectures. Hey, purple-cloaked guy. You have already joined Emperor Yu's hall and learned the saber art. These 2 people have yet to join the Xing-Yi sect. You have only learned the tiger form fist art by yourself. You only won by 1 move. Why are you so proud? This is Yangzhou, not Yuzhou. A green-cloaked girl wrinkled her nose and sneered as she walked down the stairs. This girl had an ordinary appearance, but she was delicate and pretty. Mind your own business. The purple-cloaked young man frowned. I'm just teaching you a lesson. Don't be arrogant in Yangzhou. With this, the green-cloaked girl picked up the great spear that had been sent flying. The girl held the long spear with one hand and exerted a bit of force. The long spear seemed to have a life of its own as it pierced towards the purple-cloaked young man. You overestimate yourself. The purple-cloaked young man sneered. His body moved and he slashed with his sharp blade. Chi! The moment the tip of the long spear and the blade collided, the purple-cloaked young man's facial expression changed drastically. He felt a strange rotating force that made him lose control of his blade. Pooh! The tip of the long spear stopped right in front of the purple-cloaked young man's throat. The purple-cloaked young man's face turned pale. One move. He was defeated with just one move. Good. How dare the people of Emperor Yu's Hall be arrogant in Yangzhou? Good spear technique. Immediately, many people in the restaurant cheered. In the land of the 9 prefectures, the concept of region was very important. The people of Yangzhou were proud of the Xing-Yi sect and the Gui-Yuan sect. You are still far from it. After the green-cloaked girl finished speaking, she threw the spear shaft to the young man whose eyes were shining. Again. Thump, thump, thump. He went up to the 2nd floor. In a private room on the 2nd floor, the green-cloaked girl and a blue-cloaked girl were sitting together. The blue-cloaked girl said with a bitter face, "Miss, we sneaked out. Don't cause trouble. Why don't we go back to the Great Yen Mountain?" "No." The green-cloaked girl laughed. "It's rare that my father went into seclusion. He said he wanted to create the 9th move. That's why I took the opportunity to escape. How could this young lady go back so easily? Don't worry. I learned my disguising skills from my genius father. Even if my mother was in front of me, she wouldn't be able to recognize me." End of the 3rd chapter. P.S. Twilight of the Deities 2 is out. The 3rd server will be released on Qidian at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the 25th. The controls are much better than the previous version. It's very fun. After Tomato finished writing, he planned to go and play. If you have time, you can go and play. Most importantly, if you play well, you will get some coins as a reward. As for the reward of coins, everyone can subscribe to Tomato's book. _carrot. If you want to play, you can go to Qidian's game channel. Chapter 549. Oh! The blue-clothed girl nodded and whispered, "Miss, what powerful fist art is the sovereign creating in seclusion?" I remember that he had been in seclusion for a long time 3 years ago. "I don't know." The green-clothed girl frowned and shook her head. "But father has been in seclusion for a few times these years. It's all because of this 9th fist art. It seems that this fist art is extremely difficult to create. Forget it. Let's not care about this. Let's take a stroll around Wuan County after we finish our meal. We'll leave Wuan County tomorrow." The blue-clothed girl nodded. "Leave Wuan County? Where to?" "We'll see." The green-clothed girl smiled casually. Swoosh! A white bird flew in from the window and landed on the green-clothed girl's shoulder. Little White must be hungry. The blue-clothed girl smiled at the white bird. Little White. The green-clothed girl picked up a small piece of meat with her chopsticks and placed it in front of the sharp beak of the white bird. The white bird actually pecked the meat twice and swallowed it in 2 or 3 bites. This bird was raised by the green-clothed girl when she was young. It was very obedient. Jiangning County's Great Yen Mountain. It was noon, but the foot of the Great Yen Mountain was filled with people. The official road had been widened. There were even many luxurious mansions and buildings at the foot of the Great Yen Mountain, making it look very prosperous. The Great Yen Mountain was very famous in the land of the 9 prefectures, because this was the holy land for internal martial arts cultivators. Xing-Yi sect, Great Yen Mountain. The most special place was the East Flower Garden. Young master! Young master! A handsome young man was walking in the East Flower Garden. The maids in the East Flower Garden greeted the young man with a smile. They seemed to be very familiar with him. However, they didn't feel like master and servant to each other. The young man smiled and greeted the maid beside him. "Sister Chunlan, you are more beautiful than last time. Young master is so sweet." The maids also joked. "Where's my mother?" the young man asked. At the flower garden, waiting for the sovereign to come out of seclusion, the maid named Chunlan answered. The young man nodded and hurried to the flower garden. He grew up here, so he couldn't be more familiar with the East Flower Garden. He could find the flower beds even with his eyes closed. Soon, he walked through a corridor and entered a courtyard. Soon, he arrived at a courtyard filled with flowers. In this courtyard, the purple flowers were gathered in one place, and the yellow flowers were gathered in another. Entering the courtyard was like entering a sea of flowers. A woman dressed in loose white clothes was standing in the middle of the flower bed, stepping on the flowers like a fairy as she practiced a set of fist techniques. "Mother!" the youth immediately called out. The woman who was practicing her fist technique spun around and gracefully landed on the bluestone floor. This white-clothed woman was Li Jun compared to 16 years ago. The current Li Jun was more graceful and mature. There was also a hint of gentleness in his eyes. His entire person was like a warm jadeite, making people feel at peace. "Hongwu, you're back." Li Jun walked over with a smile. There was a hint of affection in her eyes. Not long after she gave birth to her daughter, Honglin, she became pregnant again and gave birth to her son, Hongwu. It was named Wu to commemorate the time when Ting Qingshan and Li Jun were in Wuan County. Secondly, it was also a form of hope. In the land of the 9 prefectures, men needed peerless strength. Ting Qingshan also hoped that his son could possess absolute power. However, sometimes the development of things was completely different from what one imagined. His daughter, Honglin, was very obedient in front of her father, Ting Qingshan, but she was very naughty in secret. However, it was undeniable that Honglin was very interested in internal martial arts. Honglin had been practicing fist techniques since she was young. After more than 10 years of practice, she had actually reached the pinnacle of the post-liminary realm. Only the meridians on his face had not been opened yet. Moreover, Honglin was even more proficient in fist technique. Among the 5 elemental fists of Xing-Yi martial arts, Honglin was most proficient in the bursting fist. Ting Qingshan had high hopes for his son, Hongwu. However, although Hongwu had been practicing boxing seriously as he grew older, he didn't know how to do it. Hongwu, on the other hand, liked some things about the Qingshan Guild Hall more. Today, the Qingshan Guild Hall was a super-existence in the business circle of the land of the 9 prefectures. The tangible Will sect supported it secretly. In addition, there were a large number of internal martial arts practitioners all over the land of the 9 prefectures. In addition, its foundation was in the prosperous Yangzhou. The Qingshan Guild Hall now operated restaurants, illicit salt, escort agencies, and many other businesses. Although Hongwu wasn't as good as his father, Ting Qingshan, in terms of boxing, he was still above average. In addition, he was taught by the famous teacher, Ting Qingshan, and had a good environment. In addition, she was personally taught by Ting Qingshan, and the environment was good. His strength was already somewhat close to that of a first-rated warrior. Of course, compared to his sister. Obviously, there was a big difference. However, Hongwu was quite talented in business. This man can't fight against the heavens. What happens to children doesn't follow the wishes of their parents. Ting Qingshan could only sigh helplessly. What happens to children doesn't always follow the wishes of their parents. Ting Qingshan could only sigh helplessly. "Mother, father hasn't come out of seclusion yet?" Hongwu looked at the tall martial arts training room not far away. "Yes." Li Jun smiled helplessly as she looked at the newly built martial arts training room 10 years ago. "Your father has been in seclusion for about 12 days. Who knows when he will come out? But, in a month. Even if your father doesn't succeed, he will come out." To create the 9th move of the Wood Elemental Tao, Ting Qingshan had gone into seclusion many times. Obviously, among the 5 elemental Taos, Ting Qingshan had a hard time with the Wood Elemental Tao. "Oh, by the way, Mother." Hongwu looked around. "I didn't see sister when I came back." "What about your sister?" Li Jun shook her head and smiled. "You don't know your sister's temper. When your father is here, she doesn't dare to run around. Your father can catch her easily. However, when your father goes into seclusion, he didn't have time to care about her. I don't have your father's domain. If I'm not careful, this sly girl will drag Xiao Xiao out. Hongwu smiled. Sister is good at disguising herself. It's really hard to find her. Suddenly, Li Jun turned her head in surprise and looked at the martial arts training field. What's wrong, mother? Hongwu was puzzled. Something's wrong. Li Jun stared at the martial arts training room carefully. Through the crack of the door, she could faintly see a faint green light that was almost undetectable. At this moment, ha! A hearty laughter came from the martial arts training room. The laughter echoed in the sky above the East Flower Garden. A roar came from the distance of the Great Yen Mountain. It's Uncle Saber Wu. Hongwu looked into the distance in surprise. On the other hand, Li Jun's eyes were glowing as she stared at the huge stone door of the martial practice room. With a rumbling sound, the two huge stone doors began to slowly open to both sides. A tall figure walked out from the dark martial practice room. He wore a loose black robe, had long hair, and had a determined face. It was Ting Qingshan. Compared to 16 years ago, he hadn't changed much. However, he was more calm and reserved. Occasionally, there would be a hint of threatening light in his eyes. He was the founder of the Xingyi sect, which played an important role in the land of the 9 prefectures. He was also the leader of the Guiyuan sect, one of the 7 supreme sects in the land of the 9 prefectures. He had been in this position for a long time and was respected as a grandmaster. Ting Qingshan's temperament gradually changed. Little June, Ting Qingshan looked at his wife with a smile. Then, he looked at his son and asked, "Ah Wu, when did you come back?" "I just came back today," Hongwu answered. Ting Qingshan nodded with a smile. Hongwu was younger than his son, but his son was much more mature than his daughter. However, his son was obviously much more mature than his daughter when it came to dealing with people, and he didn't make her worry. "Did Linlin run out?" Ting Qingshan asked with a smile. "Yes. She ran out right after you went into seclusion." Li Jun walked over and said. Ting Qingshan shook his head and smiled. "I sensed that she ran out from the cultivation room, but I couldn't do anything about it." "Forget it. Did you find out where she is now?" "I asked Little Qing," Li Jun answered. Li Jun replied, "Little Qing has also gone to ask her subordinates. I reckon that there should be results within these 2 days." "Oh." Ting Qingshan nodded. Hongwu, who was at the side, couldn't help but whisper, "Father, have you created the 9th move of the wood element fist?" "Ha! Ting Qingshan couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Look at your father's smile. Can't you tell?" Li Jun couldn't help but laugh as well. She was happy for Ting Qingshan. After all, Ting Qingshan had spent a lot of time cultivating the wood elemental Tao, especially the 9th move. He had gone into seclusion several times and only managed to achieve a breakthrough today. After spending 16 years cultivating the wood elemental Tao, Ting Qingshan finally reached the culmination stage. Now, Ting Qingshan had finally reached the culmination stage of the emptiness realm. 100% of the power of the heavens and the earth, combined with the strength of my body. In the land of the 9 prefectures, only the insightful emptiness realm experts are stronger than me. Ting Qingshan was very confident. He didn't just spend 16 years cultivating the wood elemental Tao. He also spent a lot of time researching and sculpting the spear art. Now, Ting Qingshan asked himself, no one under the insightful emptiness realm could surpass him. I have already reached the culmination stage of the emptiness realm. And the culmination stage of the emptiness realm. That is the insightful emptiness realm. How can I reach the insightful emptiness realm? Ting Qingshan thought to himself. That day, Ting Qingshan, Li Jun, and Hongwu had a rare meal together. At night, in the study room, Ting Qingshan would sometimes practice his fist art in the study room. Sometimes, he would walk to the desk and record the essence of the fist art. Qingshan, are you creating a fist art? Li Jun walked in from the side door of the study room and asked with a smile. Yes. Reviewing the old to learn the new. Actually, when I was creating the fist art, I had a clearer understanding of the 5 elemental Daos. Ting Qingshan smiled and said, Today, I completed the wood elemental Dao. I have a better understanding of the bursting fist of the 5 elemental fists of Xing-Yi martial arts. I thought of 2 different ways of practicing the bursting fist. I need to perfect it first before recording it down. Suddenly, Ting Qingshan raised his head and looked towards the south. What's wrong? Li Jun froze. Little Blue is here. Ting Qingshan smiled and strode towards the door of the study room. Chapter 1 arrives. Chapter 550. Creak. The door of the study opened. A gust of wind blew past, and a huge divine bird that looked like a ball of flame appeared in front of the study. It was little Qing. Ting Qingshan opened its mouth and let out a chirp. Learning the language of beasts required talent. However, Emptiness Realm experts had extremely fine control over their voices. Although Ting Qingshan's mind was focused on his spear art and his comprehension of Tao, he still learned some simple language of beasts from Li Jun. Although he was still unable to converse normally with demonic beasts. However, it wasn't a problem to greet them and say a few simple words like kill and go. The undying phoenix, Little Blue's eyes were filled with joy, and it also let out a cheerful cry. Ting Qingshan and his wife, as well as the undying phoenix, Little Blue, stayed in the courtyard. Little June asked Little Qing, Have you found out where Linlin is now? Ting Qingshan asked. Okay. Li Jun hastily emitted several chirps towards the undying phoenix, Little Blue. Little Blue quickly began to chirp as well. Qingshan. A smile appeared on Li Jun's face as she looked at Ting Qingshan and said, Little Blue has already asked its subordinates and found out that Linlin is spending the night with Xiao Xiao in Lianan city of Yuzhou. He ran all the way to Yuzhou. How bold of him! Ting Qingshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the past 16 years, the undying phoenix, Little Blue, had spent most of her time in the desolate land. She would also frequently come to the Great Yin Mountain. After all, to an Emptiness Realm demonic beast that loved to fly, the Great Yin Mountain was too small. Furthermore, as the noble undying phoenix, Little Qing had gained quite a few subordinates in the vast wildlands. There were several groups of flying demonic beasts. Linlin is obedient in front of you, but she was born bold. It's not like you don't know. Li Jun glanced at Ting Qingshan in annoyance. Isn't it because you, her father, spoiled her too much when she was young? Ting Qingshan smiled helplessly. Then, he looked outside and shouted, Men! Immediately, a maid rushed over. She peeked at Ting Qingshan and bowed, Sovereign. Go and invite Elder Lu of the preaching sect, Ting Qingshan instructed. Yes. The maid left respectfully and went to invite Elder of Xing-Yi sect. It's already late at night, and you're asking Elder Zong to come? It of Elder of Zong Lu? Ting Qingshan smiled and shook his head. Elder Zong is used to staying up late. It's impossible for him to sleep at this time. Zong Lu was a member of Ting Jia village. Xing Zof Lu of Zof Zof Lu of King. Of Qing. Qing of actually, like of Zof Zof of Qing. Thereof. Of Qing of. For example, Ting Qingshan's mother, Yuan Lan, was adopted by the old patriarch, Ting Yunlong. Zong Lu was now more than 50 years old. In the past, Yu Zonglu had watched Ting Qingshan grow up. Ting Qingshan trusted Yu Zonglu very much. After all, although they were surnamed Zhong, there was not much difference between them and the clansmen of Ting Jia village. Thump, thump, thump. Light footsteps could be heard from outside. Then, a green-robed figure appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. It was Zhong Lu. Although Zhong Lu was over 50 years old, he didn't have a single strand of white hair on his head. In addition, he had also drunk some scarlet fruit wine, so his body was in excellent condition. "Uncle Zhong, come in." Ting Qingshan smiled and shouted. "Sect leader." Zhong Lu walked in with a thick stack of files and smiled. "This afternoon, I heard Sect Master's laughter. Sect Master must have gained a lot from this seclusion. This subordinate congratulates you." Ting Qingshan could only smile helplessly. In Tingjia village, he was used to calling him Uncle Zhong since he was young. But now, Zhong Lu insisted that rules couldn't be abolished. He always called himself a subordinate in front of Ting Qingshan. "Sect leader, these are the intelligence reports from various places in the past 10 days. Some of them are very important." Zhong Lu hastily handed them over. "Oh." Ting Qingshan took the files. Qingshan Enterprise was spread all over the land of the 9 prefectures, and the internal martial arts cultivators were deeply rooted in various places. Although the Xing-Yi sect's intelligence network was separated from the Gui-Yuan sect, it was still very efficient. Moreover, the intelligence network was still very efficient. Moreover, the land of the 9 prefectures was filled with turbulent undercurrents. Therefore, Ting Qingshan always read the intelligence reports personally. "By the way, Uncle Zhong." Ting Qingshan took the report and said, "Lin Lin ran out again recently." "Yes. However, Lin Lin is proficient in the art of disguise." Zhong Lu shook his head and said, "I can't find her in such a short time." Ting Qingshan smiled and said, "I already found out that Lin Lin is spending the night in Lianan City of Yuzhou. Xiao Xiao is also with her. Uncle Zhong, you should be able to find her." "Haha, it's easy as long as you know she is in Lianan City." Zhong Lu laughed and said, "Lianan City is just a small city. There aren't many people coming and going. It won't be difficult to find the 2 girls." Whether it was Honglin, Ting Qingshan's daughter, or Xiao Xiao, they all knew something special about the 2 girls. From the intelligence network, they knew something special about the 2 girls. For example, Ting Honglin was followed by a small white bird. As long as the white bird was spotted, it would immediately attack. If the little white bird was found, Ting Honglin would definitely be within several zhang. This was one of the most obvious characteristics. However, the bird was small, and it was very difficult to find it if it was hidden. However, there was another way. The maid, Xiao Xiao, was wearing a very ordinary ring. Of course, it only looked ordinary. This was one of the ways to find the 2 girls. "Yes. Tell me immediately when you find them," Ting Qingshan said. "Uncle Zhong, go and rest. I will take my leave." Zhong Lu left with a smile. Ting Qingshan, on the other hand, carried the thick stack of information and walked towards the study. Meanwhile, Li Jun chatted with the undying phoenix, Little Blue, in the courtyard. For a time, the melodious chirping of the undying phoenix could be heard. In the study, after Ting Qingshan sat down, he flipped through the intelligence reports and read them carefully. This was especially so when it involved the movements of the other major sections. He had to think about it carefully. Behind the intelligence reports, there were some deductions made by the intelligence personnel of the Xing-Yi sect. Ting Qingshan's face revealed a hint of joy. "Qingshan, what did you see? Why are you so happy?" Li Jun walked over with a smile. "Haha, our Xing-Yi sect has one more innate expert. How can I not be happy?" Ting Qingshan held the introduction of the intelligence report and couldn't help but laugh. Internal martial arts was different from Taoist and Buddhist sections. To reach the Grandmaster realm, the requirement of the spirit was not high. However, the requirement of the understanding of fist art was extremely high. In his previous life, Ting Qingshan also reached the Grandmaster realm of Xing-Yi martial arts at the edge of life and death. In his previous life, many people reached the Grandmaster realm of internal martial arts at the age of 20. In fact, the strongest martial artists were young and strong. Most of the martial artists reached the Grandmaster realm at a young age. After the age of 50, the chances of success would decrease. This was because after the age of 50, the muscles, bones, and internal organs of the body would degenerate, which would greatly affect the internal martial arts. On the contrary, the Taoist and Buddhist lineages focused on the soul. The older one was, the stronger one's soul would be, making it easier for one to reach the Khanate realm. Of course, if one was too old, Shen Du would start to deplete, and naturally, he would not be able to reach the innate realm. 16 years. Ting Qingshan's third disciple, Xuexian, was extremely talented. In addition, Ting Qingshan had personally taught him. In the 9th year after the establishment of the Xingyi sect, he reached the Grandmaster realm, innate. As for his second disciple, Yang Dong, he wasn't proficient in the internal martial arts and walked the path of Taoism. Although he had a high status in the Xingyi sect, he only reached the innate realm in the 15th year of the Xingyi sect's establishment. At this time, 2 of the third-generation disciples had reached the Grandmaster level. Yang Dong was indeed embarrassed. "Who is it?" Li Jun hastily looked over and said in surprise, "Meng Lutong? Is he the first young man who joined the Xingyi sect after it was founded?" "Yes, that's him. I thought that he was born in a wealthy family and had never suffered. It is very difficult for him to achieve great success. Who would have thought that he would become the third person among the third-generation disciples to reach the innate realm?" Ting Qingshan couldn't help but sigh. Currently, the Xingyi sect had hundreds of thousands of disciples. If the number of internal martial arts disciples in the land of the 9 prefectures and other sects were counted, there were probably more than 1 million people who cultivated the internal martial arts. In the past 16 years, most of these cultivators were in their 20s or 30s. It was the easiest time for them to make breakthroughs and achieve great achievements. Meng Lutong has perseverance. Li Jun nodded and said with a smile, "With perseverance, he will naturally succeed." Yes. Currently, 4 of the second-generation disciples in the Xingyi sect are innate experts. 3 of the third-generation disciples are innate experts. 2 of the fourth-generation disciples are innate experts. None of the fifth-generation disciples are innate experts. Ting Qingshan nodded slightly and said, "There are a total of 9 innate experts. 2 of them are from the Taoist lineage. The other 7 are from the internal martial arts lineage." Ting Qingshan was delighted as he thought to himself, "After some time, I will personally meet this Meng Lutong. I will see which fist art is the most suitable for him to cultivate." Once an internal martial art cultivator reached the Grandmaster realm, he would be qualified to be personally taught by Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan picked up another piece of information. When he read it, he couldn't help but frown, and his facial expression became unsightly. This. Li Jun also read it, and her facial expression became unsightly. "How can Emperor Yu's hall be so shameless?" Currently, the other 7 sects in the land of the 9 prefectures are the most shameless. Emperor Yu's hall is the most shameless. Ting Qingshan read the information. According to the information, Emperor Yu's hall had used all kinds of favors and benefits to attract some internal martial arts cultivators who had succeeded in learning the tiger form fist art in Yuzhou. They had even stopped many talented and famous internal martial arts cultivators who wanted to go to the Xingyi sect in the Great Yen Mountain. If the soft approach didn't work, they would use the hard approach. He wants to recruit all the internal martial arts cultivators in Yuzhou. Ting Qingshan snorted coldly. Ever since the supreme sects discovered the power of the internal martial arts, Li Jun said with a frown. The various sects started to attract the local cultivators of the internal martial art with various benefits. Those youths didn't want to leave their hometowns. They wanted to be helpful to their hometowns. In the sect, many of them joined them. Emperor Yu's hall, the Heavenly God Palace, the Snow Hawk Hall, and the Ying family all did the same. Ting Qingshan had no choice but to acquiesce. However, the internal martial arts cultivators who joined Emperor Yu's hall, the Heavenly God Palace, and the Snow Hawk Hall could only cultivate the Taoist sect. Their achievements were limited. Originally, they used benefits and favors to attract them. It depended on the willingness of the internal martial arts cultivators. That's not all. I didn't expect that Emperor Yu's hall would resort to force when the soft approach failed. To stop those youths who wanted to learn more profound internal martial arts. Ting Qingshan couldn't help but clench his teeth. Humph! Yu Tonghai died in the hands of the undying phoenix. As a result, the relationship between Emperor Yu's hall and the Xing-Yi sect had always been tense. Qingshan, look at this. Li Jun flipped open another piece of information and hastily said in surprise, "The situation is not good. Here's the first chapter. I originally had 3 chapters today, but I still owe 2 chapters yesterday. Hoo-hoo, work hard." Chapter 551. What's wrong? Ting Qingshan was also shocked by Li Jun's expression. According to the intelligence, some troop movements in Sian Province and Yuzhou Province were described in the intelligence. What does the Heavenly God Palace want to do? Ting Qingshan said angrily. It seems that it wants to gather the army in Yuzhou? Ting Qingshan was the instigator of the chaos in the land of the 9 prefectures. He had been paying close attention to every move of the Heavenly God Palace for the past 16 years. Because of the existence of Ting Qingshan, the Heavenly God Palace couldn't go south to attack Yangzhou. Therefore, the Heavenly God Palace was quiet for 16 years, which was very rare. 16 years was enough for a baby to grow into a young man. This Heavenly Deity Palace is going to make a big move, Ting Qingshan said worriedly. Yes, very likely. Li Jun nodded. When I was at the Snowy Lotus cult, I already knew that the palace master seemed to have some grand plan. Attacking Yangzhou at that time was only one step of the plan. After 16 years of recuperation, the Heavenly God Palace's control over Qingzhou, Yuzhou, and the Great Pasture will definitely be much stronger. The Qing province has the largest population, while the Yu province is a bitterly cold place with tough people. Not to mention the Great Prairie. If the armies of the 3 lands are gathered together, they will definitely be the most valiant army in the land of the 9 prefectures, Li Jun said worriedly. However, I don't know how ambitious the Heavenly God Palace is. If it's just 1 or 2 places, it's fine. Ting Qingshan shook his head. What I fear the most is that he wants to learn from the Northeast King and use the Northeast as his base to conquer the entire 9 prefectures. If the Xing-Yi sect wanted to unify the world, the Xing-Yi sect would become the enemy of the Heavenly God Palace. After all, in terms of manpower, there isn't a single sect in the world. Ting Qingshan was very worried. The prairie outside Qingzhou and Yuzhou had a population of nearly 1 billion. Every citizen of the prairie was a soldier. From these 3 places, the Heavenly God Palace could gather an invincible army of nearly 10 million people. Moreover, according to what Little Blue's mother said before she left, the expert who obtained the grass of immortality from her is in the Azure Province. I'm afraid it is Pei San. Ting Qingshan was very sure that only insightful Emptiness Realm experts could contend against Little Blue's mother. When Pei San fought against Qin Shichi, the other insightful Emptiness Realm cultivator, he seemed to have casually used the techniques of the Buddhist sect, the Tantric sect, and the Tao of wild beasts. In the land of the 9 prefectures, the person he feared the most was undoubtedly Pei San, who he could not see through. Back then, the 6-eared earth-drilling mouse was able to severely injure an Emptiness Realm demonic beast with a hidden weapon. He has an invincible army and his own strength. Ting Qingshan could not help but feel a wave of pressure. However, the territory of the Xing-Yi sect is small. His greatest enemies are the ancient Emperor Yu's hall, the Ying family, and the Mani Temple. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The mobilization of the heavenly god Pallas's army had actually made all the sects in the land of the 9 prefectures nervous. Compared to the Xing-Yi sect, which only had a territory of 5 counties, the heavenly god Pallas, which controlled nearly 1 billion citizens, was the most frightening force to the various sections. 2 days later. Ha! In the great Yen mountain, the sounds of people practicing fist arts could be heard from afar. It was the sound of hundreds of thousands of disciples of the Xing-Yi sect practicing their fist arts together. Ting Qingshan was also in the courtyard. He was practicing his fist arts casually. Sometimes he would use the collapsing fist art, and sometimes he would use the water element fist art that was like a python. He was practicing all kinds of fist arts at will. Everything was done according to his will. For a moment, the maid, who was holding a cup of tea in the distance, felt that Ting Qingshan was like an erupting volcano or a surging flood. The maid was so frightened that she turned her head away and did not dare to look at him. Ting Qingshan's fist arts could already affect one's spirit. "Elder, the sovereign is practicing his fist arts," the maid said softly. At this moment, Zhong Lu stood beside the maid and waited quietly. "Phew!" Ting Qingshan let out a long breath and stood still. "Uncle Zhong." Ting Qingshan turned his head and walked over with a smile. He took the cup of tea from the maid and drank 2 mouthfuls before putting it down. "You came here so early in the morning. Is there something important? Have you found Linlin?" "Sovereign is the best." Zhong Lu nodded and said, "I have found young mistress. She is now joining a large caravan in Yuzhou." "Oh, a caravan." Ting Qingshan nodded. "I have already arranged for someone to enter the caravan and report young mistress's whereabouts at all times," Zhong Lu said. At the same time, he handed Ting Qingshan a report. "This is the details." Ting Qingshan took the report and flipped through it. Then, he looked up at the sky. The autumn morning sun was very comfortable. "The weather is good now. I plan to go out with little June to relax. When the time comes, I will bring Linlin back with me. Since the sovereign is going personally, nothing will go wrong. I can rest assured," Zhong Lu said with a smile. In the morning, Ting Qingshan went to look for Li Jun, who was touring the great Yen mountain with the undying phoenix, Little Blue. "Going out for a walk?" Li Jun's eyes brightened. "Yes. I haven't gone out with you this year." Ting Qingshan smiled and nodded. "Let's go with Little Blue to Yuzhou and join the caravan. Let's see what our daughter is playing. Let's see what our daughter is playing. It can be considered a relaxing trip. After playing for a few days, we will bring Linlin back." Although Ting Qingshan spent most of his energy on cultivation, he would accompany his wife to some famous mountains and great rivers in the land of the 9 prefectures every year. "Okay. There's no time to lose. Let's go immediately." Li Jun was very excited. "Don't rush. Let's change our appearance. Don't let our daughter recognize you." Ting Qingshan smiled and touched his face. His appearance immediately changed. That day, Ting Qingshan changed his appearance while Li Jun wore a human skin mask. The husband and wife rode on the undying phoenix, Little Blue. After informing the substitute sect leader, Yang Dong, they left the great Yen mountain and flew towards Yu province. August 16, noon. On an official road in Yuzhou. It was autumn and the air was cool. It was the perfect time to go out. A majestic caravan of more than 1,000 people was slowly advancing on the official road. This caravan was made up of several small caravans. There were also some independent merchants and lone travelers. Of course, almost 30% of the people in this caravan were guards. Go! Among the caravan, there were 3 riders riding side by side. They were a couple and a middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak who was full of smiles. "Sovereign, the young lady is in front of us," the middle-aged man said in a low voice. "Oh." Ting Qingshan nodded. Actually, he had already frozen the space around him, so his voice couldn't be heard. Did Lin Lin do anything special along the way? Ting Qingshan asked. Sovereign, I have a piece of news to tell you. The middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak hastily said. At noon yesterday, more than 10 people joined the caravan. One of them is a young man who is somewhat famous in Yuzhou. His name is Wei Jiang. The young lady seems to have a good impression of Wei Jiang. They have been walking together. Wei Jiang? Li Jun, who was at the side, was shocked. Ting Qingshan frowned slightly. As a parent, he would feel nervous when he saw his daughter getting close to another young man. Do you know where Wei Jiang came from? Ting Qingshan asked. Sovereign. The middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak revealed a smile and said, Wei Jiang is from Yuzhou. When he was young, a small village called Wei Jia village in his hometown was plundered by bandit. The entire village suffered many casualties and was torn apart. From then on, Wei Jiang became an orphan. However, he learned the tiger form fist art by chance. Moreover, Wei Jiang's talent should be extremely high. Not long ago, he single-handedly swept away the 3 big mountain strongholds. The 3 strongholds collapsed, and the 3 stronghold masters were all killed. He took revenge for his hometown, Wei Jia village, and for some of his relatives. 3 big mountain strongholds. Ting Qingshan was shocked. A self-taught internal martial art cultivator could reach this level? Yes. The 3 big mountain strongholds. According to the rumors, Wei Jiang didn't know which mountain stronghold destroyed his hometown. Therefore, he swept away all 3 strongholds. The middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak said with a smile, Sovereign. That was a sneak attack at night. It wasn't honorable. However, it's true that Wei Jiang has the strength of a first-rated warrior. Haha. Only the branch of internal martial art can defeat 3 strongholds by himself. The Taoist branch and the Buddhist sect will be captured once their inner strength is depleted. This was one of the advantages of internal martial art. With physical strength, one could persevere for a long time. Lin Lin is a little martial arts fanatic. Ting Qingshan looked at the distance and vaguely saw a graceful figure. I know that Wei Jiang relied on the tiger form fist art to reach this level. Naturally, I'm curious. Therefore, it's not strange to get close to him temporarily. Qingshan, don't be careless. Li Jun immediately glared at her. Lin Lin was 17 years old, and many people had come to matchmake her. After all, many people dreamed of becoming the son-in-law of the Grandmaster, Ting Qingshan. However, Ting Qingshan and Li Jun both believed that their daughter had to agree. At the same time, both of them had to acknowledge the marriage. Wei Jiang. Ting Qingshan sensed the young man beside his daughter and said with a smile, This kid's spirit is quite strong. It seems like he has achieved a high level in the tiger form fist art. Haha. Little June, you don't say. If my daughter gets along well with Wei Jiang, and Wei Jiang is a good person, we can be a couple. They really could make a pair. Li Jun looked at him helplessly. In the caravan, Ting Qingshan and Li Jun listened to the surrounding merchants talking about interesting things and looked at the surrounding scenery. From time to time, they would pay attention to their daughter and the young man named Wei Jiang. They were living a carefree life. The next morning, the caravan had just assembled outside the city and set off for a few li. Ting Qingshan frowned. What's going on? Li Jun looked behind her in surprise. It's the people of Emperor Yu's hall. Why are they out? The middle-aged man in the gray cloak was puzzled, but he wasn't worried at all. After all, the person next to him was the martial ancestor of the Xing Yi sect. In the land of the 9 prefectures, the martial ancestor of the Xing Yi sect could shake the entire land of the 9 prefectures with just a word. A mighty cavalry troop actually dashed out of the original city. This was the army of Emperor Yu's hall. In front of the army, the caravan naturally moved to the side of the official road and let the cavalry pass first. Everyone make way! Quickly move to the side. The people of the caravan immediately shouted. Clop, clop, Clop! The war horses galloped, and a large number of cavalrymen dashed to the front of the caravan. Nay, the cavalrymen actually stopped. The cavalrymen had blocked the caravan. End of the second chapter. Continue writing the third chapter. Chapter 552. This troop of cavalrymen was vast and mighty. There were at least 1,000 of them. For a moment they completely blocked the caravan, preventing it from moving forward. My lords! One of the organizers of the caravan, an old man with white hair, cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I am the 9-Horse Trading Company, old man." Suddenly, a voice of dissatisfaction rang out. The leader of this troop of cavalrymen was a young man wearing a black fish scale armor. He sat on a tall horse and looked down at the old man. He said with dissatisfaction, "Don't be so long-winded. I am here to capture people. I am here to capture people. Your 9-Horse Trading Company should just obediently listen to my orders. Otherwise, this general doesn't mind throwing you into prison as well." These words frightened the old man so much that he shook his head and retreated. The entire caravan immediately quieted down and looked at this troop of cavalrymen carefully. "Who is Wei Jiang? Come out!" A loud shout echoed through the entire caravan. Ting Qingshan, who was at the back of the caravan, furrowed his brows. Although he didn't know much about Wei Jiang was a genius in the cultivation of internal martial art. Of course, in order for a genius to become a true expert, he still needed to polish himself. Secondly, his daughter seemed to be quite close to Wei Jiang. Ting Qingshan had a good impression of Wei Jiang. "Who is Wei Jiang?" Another loud shout sounded. "General, he is here." A soldier immediately pointed out. A tall young man carrying an iron spear walked out from the front of the caravan and beside 2 young girls. He said in a deep voice, "Why are you looking for me?" Wei Jiang was tall. He was almost 8 feet tall and had a pair of tiger-like eyes that were like the eyes of the thunder god. As he stood there, he naturally emitted a domineering aura. He also looked like a ferocious tiger. However, his face was rather delicate and pretty, and it was obvious that he was young. You are Wei Jiang?" The young general who was sitting on the high horse looked at Wei Jiang carefully and sneered. "Looking at you, you seem to be quite capable. However, no matter how capable you are, you can't break the rules with your martial arts. Men, capture him." "Yes." Immediately, 10 soldiers surrounded him. "Who dares to capture me?" Wei Jiang's eyes widened in anger, and the black iron spear that was 3 meters long suddenly appeared in his hand. This black iron spear, coupled with Wei Jiang's aura, was clearly very intimidating. Although the 10 soldiers surrounded him, they didn't dare to get close. "Get lost." The long spear in Wei Jiang's hand suddenly swept horizontally. With a whooshing sound, a strong gust of wind appeared on the ground, causing the 10 soldiers to retreat in fear. Ting Qingshan, who was watching from afar, revealed a smile. "His strength is not small. That black iron spear must weigh a few dozen kilograms. To be able to wield it so easily with one arm, your arm strength is amazing." Ting Qingshan looked at him as if he was looking at his disciple. "General, you said that I broke a prohibition with my martial arts. May I know what prohibition I broke?" Wei Jiang's voice was sonorous and powerful as he stared at the young general in the distance. Not long ago, a family of 13 people died a horrible death in Lian City. According to our investigation, all of their corpses were pierced by spears. Moreover, there were people who witnessed it with their own eyes. It was you! You, Wei Jiang, committed the crime. The young general's face was filled with anger as he shouted, "A family of 13 people killed people in the city. Even if they escaped to the ends of the earth, it would be useless. You have such a vicious heart. How can I not capture you?" "No, I didn't kill them," Wei Jiang roared. "Don't try to quibble." The young general sneered. "You think that my soldiers don't dare to capture you? Fine, this general will see how much you have to offer. A clang sound was heard. The young general held a dark green heavy sword in his hand. He swooped down from his warhorse like an eagle. He turned 3 times in the air and flew for more than 100 meters before landing. He landed less than 3 meters away from Wei Jiang. Wei Jiang's expression changed on the spot when he saw this Qinggong. This young general is quite strong, Ting Qingshan, who was in the caravan, said to himself. He can fly more than 100 meters and is wearing heavy armor. He is definitely a first-rated warrior. To be able to become a general of the city guards at such a young age, he is not an ordinary person. I alone am enough to capture you, the young general sneered. The heavy sword in his hand suddenly turned into a blurry fan shape. Streaks of afterimages flew towards Wei Jiang. Humph! Wei Jiang humphed angrily. His feet were like the roots of an old tree that were deeply rooted in the ground. The black iron spear in his hand was like a roaring tiger as it dashed forward. Boom! Using force to break technique, the iron spear directly shattered the young general's sword afterimages. However, the young general's body movements were strange. With a flash of his body, he immediately launched a terrifying sword strike that was as fast as lightning. Ting Qingshan and Li Jun, who were in the caravan, laughed as they discussed. This Wei Jiang's strength is quite good. Moreover, this spear art seems to have the concept of cannon fist. Ting Qingshan smiled and nodded. Moreover, his entire body is moving and dodging. It seems like there is a tiger in his heart. He had completely cultivated the tiger form into his bones and into his heart. Unfortunately, his spear art is a bit crude. Li Jun nodded as well. That young general was obviously taught by a famous teacher. This sword art is the Earth-class secret codex of Emperor Yu's Hall, the Purple Thunder Sword Codex. If Wei Jiang fought empty-handed, he would definitely win. Ting Qingshan sighed inwardly. This was the disadvantage of many internal martial arts cultivators who had only cultivated the tiger form fist art. Qingshan, if you can give him pointers for half a day, with Wei Jiang's foundation his strength will definitely increase by leaps and bounds. He will be able to defeat the people of Emperor Yu's Hall. Li Jun's eyes were sharp. She could see that Wei Jiang was an unpolished jade. Wei Jiang's attainments in the tiger form fist art were extremely high. However, he couldn't completely transfer it to the spear art. However, Li Jun said with a slight frown, Wei Jiang killed a family of 13, madam. The middle-aged man dressed in a grey cloak said respectfully, the sovereign and madam rarely come out, so they don't know much about this. Actually, Emperor Yu's Hall has been using all kinds of methods to stop the internal martial arts cultivators who want to join the Xing-Yi sect. They have been using all kinds of methods to frame people. Today, Emperor Yu's Hall obviously wants to take Wei Jiang away. Shameless. Li Jun's expression changed. Humph. Ting Qingshan's face darkened as well. Although it was mentioned in the intelligence report, he couldn't connect it with his own eyes. As expected, Emperor Yu's Hall didn't hesitate to use any means to take away the internal martial art cultivators, especially those who were extremely talented. Someone like Wei Jiang. After my guidance and training, he will definitely be able to grow stronger. It would definitely not be a problem to reach the first level of the Earth ranking. Ting Qingshan was infuriated. Perhaps, after a few years, he might step into the Grandmaster realm. There were very few people like Wei Jiang. In the Xing-Yi sect, it was very difficult to find someone who had practiced the tiger form fist art to such a high level. Not to mention the self-taught cultivators. If Ting Qingshan wasn't such a genius, Emperor Yu's Hall wouldn't have sent an army to capture him. Purring! The ground trembled. In the distance, Wei Jiang retreated 9 steps in succession, leaving deep footprints on the ground with each step, and even causing the ground to crack. Clang! The spear that was sent flying fell to the side. Take him away. The young general laughed coldly as he gave the order. He snickered inwardly. I thought I could wipe out the 3 strongholds with a single spear strike. How strong was he? The sect arranged for my teacher to come with me, just in case. However, he is just a self-taught cultivator. That's all. The scene of the young general defeating Wei Jiang made the only bald elder in the troop of cavalrymen, who wasn't wearing armor, smile as he stroked his beard and nodded. Ting Qingshan, who was in the caravan, frowned and prepared to take Wei Jiang away. Suddenly, so that's how it is. You guys are so shameless. A clear and melodious shout rang out. Ting Qingshan scratched his head and exchanged a glance with Li Jun, who was beside him, and smiled helplessly. The green-clothed young lady nimbly punched and kicked, sending the soldier who was about to capture Wei Jiang flying. Then, the green-clothed young lady kicked and easily picked up the huge spear that weighed over 10 jin. She casually swung the spear with her right hand and nodded slightly. Not bad. She placed the spear horizontally in front of her and looked disdainfully at the young general. She snickered and said, Before this I really thought that big brother Wei Jiang killed someone. I didn't expect that. Emperor Yu's hall is actually so shameless. How dare you? The young general's face darkened. How dare you? The green-clothed young lady, Hong Lin, suddenly shouted. So, it turns out that Emperor Yu's hall has done this many times. Why didn't you join the internal martial art cultivators of Emperor Yu's hall? Did you become a murderer or a rapist? Emperor Yu's hall is really good at making up stories. I'm here today. Don't even think about taking big brother Wei Jiang away. Xiaohong, Wei Jiang hastily said, his face turning pale with fright. Big brother Wei Jiang, just watch from the side. Hong Lin held the long spear in her hand, looking valiant and formidable. The young general's expression became even more unsightly. He sneered and said, You crazy woman. It seems that you are in cahoots with Wei Jiang. Then, get ready to go to prison together. With this, he rapidly dashed toward Hong Lin. Every step he took seemed to be of different sizes, forming a strange rhythm. In the blink of an eye, the heavy sword had already arrived in front of Hong Lin. It was obvious that the young general did not underestimate Hong Lin. He used his trump card. Humph! Hong Lin humphed and stood firmly. She held the spear in one hand and stabbed with the other. Phew! 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 The pursuing shadow spear art of the Xing E5 elemental spear art was being used with great proficiency. For a moment, a whirlpool-like spear shadow engulfed the young general. The young general's expression changed drastically. In the distance, the bald old man's expression also changed. Clang! 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 Oh no! The young general barely blocked 3 spear strikes. In the end, he held the heavy sword horizontally and tried his best to block the 4th spear strike. Bang! His entire body was sent flying and crashed into the group of soldiers in the distance. Wow! This girl is so powerful! The group of merchants exclaimed in surprise. No one expected that a girl could be so powerful. In the group of merchants, Ting Qingshan smiled and said, Among the 5 elemental fists, Hong Lin is most proficient in the bursting fist. This spear art is also most proficient in the pursuing shadow spear art. It already has the strength of the earthly ranking. In terms of attainments, Hong Lin was naturally not as good as Ting Qingshan in the past. However, the pursuing shadow spear art that Hong Lin learned was modified by Ting Qingshan many times. It was much more exquisite and powerful than the pursuing shadow spear art that Ting Qingshan created when he was 10 years old in Tingjia village. Which family are you from? Why don't you know the rules? You have no manners. How dare you block the army? A figure suddenly dashed out from the crowd of soldiers in the distance. Let me teach you the rules. Ting Qingshan and Li Jun's expressions turned ugly. How could their child be called unruly and uneducated? Wasn't he just an innate expert? How could he be so arrogant? Phew! Phew! Ting Qingshan and Li Jun moved almost at the same time. However, Ting Qingshan's speed was even more astonishing. He appeared in front of the group of merchants as if he had teleported. "Who do you think you are? How dare you say that my daughter has no manners?" A deep voice suddenly sounded. At the same time, this voice was like an invisible shock wave that directly hit the blurry figure. The blurry figure flew back at an even faster speed. Chapter 3 is up, Chapter 4 is up. Chapter 553. Who do you think you are? How dare you say that my daughter has no manners? The angry roar resounded in their ears. The soldiers in the troop of cavalrymen widened their eyes as they stared at the scene in disbelief. The figure that had been flying out flew back at an even faster speed. Rumble, the figure directly collided with the warhorse he was originally riding. Nay, the warhorse neighed as it was knocked off the ground, and then fiercely collided with the surrounding cavalry. For a time, over 10 cavalrymen were implicated, and their horses were thrown off their feet. As for the bald old man, he spat out a mouthful of dark red blood and fell to the ground, his body covered in mud. Who is it? The bald elder was terrified. He didn't even see his opponent, but he felt a formless force hitting his body. If he didn't put up a barrier of innate true origin, he would have been killed on the spot. "Teacher, how is this possible?" The young general was dumbfounded. The reason why he asked his teacher to come was because he was worried that Wei Jiang, who had defeated the 3 strongholds with a single spear strike, would be too powerful. Therefore, he asked his teacher, who was already an emptiness Dan innate expert, to come. After all, Wei Jiang had learned the tiger form fist art by himself and reached such a level. This meant that most of the meridians in his body had been opened. Once one cultivated an inner strength secret technique, he would be able to cultivate an ordinary secret technique to the extreme. It wouldn't be difficult for him to have an explosive force of tens of thousands of jin. Therefore, he asked an innate expert to come and capture Wei Jiang. "This is..." The young general stared at the white-cloaked figure that stood like a spear. "Who is he? I lost without even seeing him. Even a Golden Dan innate expert can't do this. Could it be?" The heavily injured bald elder, Hu Zhong, stared at the white-cloaked man nearby. "It's an emptiness realm expert." Hu Zhong, who had roamed the Jianghu for his entire life, had never met an emptiness realm expert. He was used to running amok. "Teacher." The young general immediately rushed over and helped the bald elder up. On the official road, the caravan and the troop of cavalrymen were discussing in low voices. Ting Qingshan didn't even bother to look at the bald elder. He turned to look at his daughter, Honglin, and shouted, "Come here." "Father." Honglin stuck out her tongue and immediately ran over obediently. Although Ting Qingshan didn't show his real face, Honglin had been following her father since she was young. She could even recognize Ting Qingshan's back. Moreover, Ting Qingshan's body and voice weren't fake. The maid Xiao, also ran over. She didn't dare to look at Ting Qingshan and just followed Honglin. "Thank you for your help, Xiao Hong." Wei Jiang cupped his hands and bowed to Honglin. Then, he bowed to Ting Qingshan and said, "Wei Jiang greets Senior." Ting Qingshan glanced at him and nodded slightly. Then, he smiled and looked at his daughter. "Xiao Hong." Honglin blinked. Xiao Hong was obviously a fake name that Honglin made up. How naughty. Li Jun suddenly appeared beside Honglin and patted her shoulder. Honglin was startled. She turned her head and was slightly confused. She obviously didn't know Li Jun, who was wearing a mask. However, when she saw the necklace on Li Jun's neck, she understood. "Mother," Honglin called out obediently. "Senior." An aged voice rang out. Ting Qingshan turned his head and saw the bald elder standing beside the young general. The bald elder cupped his hands and said, "Senior, the young man next to you, Wei Jiang, is a criminal that Emperor Yu's Hall wants to capture. He slaughtered a family of 13 people in Lianan City. Senior, please allow Emperor Yu's Hall to arrest him. What's your name? Ting Qingshan asked indifferently. The bald elder was stunned. Then, he said respectfully, Junior is Hu Zhong. Hu Zhong, Hu Zhong. Ting Qingshan smiled and glanced at him. Just now, I heard you say something about being uneducated and unruly? The bald elder seemed very embarrassed. The young general beside him didn't dare to speak. He knew very well that even his teacher, an innate expert, was sent flying before he could even see clearly. How could he afford to offend a figure who had to respectfully address him as senior? Senior, I didn't know the rules, the bald elder hastily apologized. Humph! A low snort startled the bald old man. Li Jun, who was at the side, sneered and said, Old man Hu Zhong, you can't talk to my daughter like that. Unruly and uneducated? Tsk. This is my fault. Hu Zhong cupped his hands again and pointed at Wei Jiang. However, Wei Jiang is a criminal who killed a family of 13 people. Emperor Yu's Hall ordered me to lead an army to capture him. Senior, please hand this criminal over to Emperor Yu's Hall. Such a crazy person deserves to die. The young general beside Hu Zhong cupped his hands and said, Senior, this is an order from Emperor Yu's Hall. My teacher is to bring the criminal over. I'm sure you understand how important this is to Emperor Yu's Hall. Hu Zhong and his disciple were obviously using Emperor Yu's Hall to pressure others. The name of Emperor Yu's Hall was very useful in the land of the 9 prefectures. Even emptiness realm experts wouldn't provoke the oldest sect if it wasn't necessary. Who is this person? Even the generals of Emperor Yu's Hall are so respectful. That Hu Zhong is a famous person in the land of the 9 prefectures. It's said that he is already an innate expert. He actually called the white-cloaked man senior. Could he be a Golden Dan innate expert? A super expert ranked in the heavenly ranking? Many people in the caravan and the cavalrymen were thinking. However, no one could recognize him. Murder? A family of 13 people? And he killed people in the city? Ting Qingshan nodded slightly and said, He did offend Emperor Yu's Hall. You guys are right to arrest him. At the side, Wei Jiang couldn't help but stare at Hu Zhong and yell, You people of Emperor Yu's Hall are too shameless. I just didn't agree to join Emperor Yu's Hall. I didn't expect that I would join this caravan halfway through my journey through the mountains. You guys still found me so quickly. I didn't even enter Lianan City. How could I kill people? Still trying to quibble, the young general sneered. Witnesses and material evidence are here. It's useless no matter what you say. The bald elder cupped his hands and bowed to Ting Qingshan. I believe Senior can see through such a treacherous person. Ting Qingshan glanced at him with a smile and said, Yes, I can see through such a treacherous person. The bald old man smiled. You are a treacherous person. Ting Qingshan continued smiling. The bald elder's expression froze. Senior, Emperor Yu's Hall. The bald elder wanted to use Emperor Yu's Hall to threaten Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan's face finally darkened. He yelled, Hu Zhong, listen to me. Go back and tell the supreme elders of Emperor Yu's Hall, Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin. It's fine if you use small favors to snatch the branch of internal martial art. However, the branch of internal martial art doesn't want to join Emperor Yu's Hall. Don't frame us. Don't use such despicable methods to capture us. If word of this gets out, it will be a disgrace. Not only will it disgrace Emperor Yu's Hall, but it will also disgrace your founding ancestor, Emperor Yu. The bald elder's face instantly turned purple. You! The bald elder was completely dumbfounded. Humph! Tell Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin exactly what I said, Ting Qingshan said coldly. You, who exactly are you? Are you a branch of internal martial art? Who are you? The bald elder couldn't help but ask. Everyone in the caravan and the cavalrymen were confused as well. Only then did Ting Qing Shan remember the problem of his appearance. He touched his face slightly, and as if he had changed his face, Ting Qing Shan's appearance was restored. You are Ting Ting. The bald elder was shocked. It's Ting Qing Shan. The young military officer couldn't help but exclaim. Ting Qing Shan created a third branch of internal martial art, which was different from the two branches of Taoist sect and Buddhist sect. In addition, he was the youngest emptiness realm expert since the creation of the world at the age of 21. All of this caused the news about Ting Qingshan to spread wildly throughout the land of the 9 prefectures. Ting Qingshan's portrait had already spread far and wide. In many mountain villages, Ting Qingshan's portrait was pasted up. Then, all the youths who practiced the tiger form fist art in the village went to worship the founding ancestor. Ting Qingshan. The founding ancestor of the Xing-Yi sect, Ting Qingshan? The founding ancestor of the internal martial art, Ting Qingshan. The caravan and the soldiers of Emperor Yu's hall were all excited. Oh my God! Ting Qingshan had countless admirers in the land of the 9 prefectures. After all, the influence of the internal martial art was too great in the past 16 years. Even Emperor Yu's hall, the Heavenly God Palace, and many other sects tried to attract the cultivators of the internal martial art to join their sections. Even in Emperor Yu's hall, there were many cultivators of the internal martial art. Many youths failed to cultivate the internal martial art. Therefore, they chose to cultivate the Taoist sect or the Buddhist sect. In their hearts, they naturally worshipped Ting Qingshan, the founder of the internal martial art. Senior Ting. The bald elder was slightly frightened. Did you hear what I said? Ting Qingshan looked at him coldly and said, Tell Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin what I, Ting Qingshan, said exactly what I said. Tell them not to embarrass Emperor Yu's hall. And don't embarrass Emperor Yu. The bald elder's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Let's go. Ting Qingshan turned his head and said to Li Jun and his daughter, Honglin. When he saw Wei Jiang, he smiled and said, Wei Jiang, if you are willing to join the Xing-Yi sect, then come with me. Junior is willing, Wei Jiang hastily said excitedly. He actually. The father of Xiaohong, the white-cloaked man in front of him, was actually the founder of the internal martial art, Ting Qingshan. Senior Ting, I also want to join the Xing-Yi sect. A young man carrying a silver long spear ran out from the caravan. He looked very capable. Me too. Another young man, who was slightly younger and looked very sturdy, rushed out with a long spear in his hand. In this caravan, it was obvious that Wei Jiang was not the only one who wanted to go to Yangzhou to join the Xing-Yi sect. Ting Qingshan looked at the young man and nodded with a smile. All right, let's go together. Immediately, a 5-colored radiance appeared around Ting Qingshan's body and quickly enveloped the few people around him. With a whooshing sound, the 5-colored radiance flashed, and Ting Qingshan and the others completely disappeared. Only the excited people of the caravan and the many people in the army of Emperor Yu's hall who worshipped Ting Qingshan were left. Chapter 4 is up. There is still Chapter 5. Continue to work hard. Chapter 554. Only Lord Ting dares to speak up against Emperor Yu's hall's despicable methods. Let's see what Emperor Yu's hall will do now. Many people in the caravan discussed in low voices. The caravan had seen the behavior of Emperor Yu's hall many times. They all knew that Emperor Yu's hall used framing to catch people. However, no one dared to offend Emperor Yu's hall. Today, Ting Qingshan's words were like a slap to Emperor Yu's hall's face. Would Emperor Yu's hall still have the face to do this in the future? Teacher. The young general looked at the bald elder and said, What you said, of course we will. Let the supreme elders decide what to do. The bald elder was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. I don't believe that Emperor Yu's hall can't defeat the Xing-Yi sect, which only has 16 years of history. Asterisk 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 asterisk. The Yuyang Grand Canal made Yangzhou and Yuzhou the two most prosperous prefectures in the land of the 9 prefectures. A cruise ship was braving the waves in the canal. Ting Qingshan and his companions were on the boat. After the caravan left, Ting Qingshan didn't return to Jiangning County. Instead, he brought a group of people to the pier of the Yuyang Grand Canal and bought a boat. Then, everyone boarded the boat and floated along the river, heading towards Yangzhou. The scenery is great. On the second floor of the boat, Li Jun sat on a chair and looked at the scenery on both sides of the river. She smiled and said, "I haven't. I tried drifting along the Yuyang Grand Canal. Let's take a good look this time." Ting Qingshan smiled. He came out this time to bring Linlin home and to accompany his wife. The Yuyang Grand Canal started in the northwest of Yuzhou and extended southeast, passing through more than half of Yangzhou. It even passed through Jiangning County City. Ting Qingshan and his companions boarded the boat. As long as they floated along the river, they would arrive at Jiangning very quickly. "Father." Honglin seemed very excited. "Look over there. How is Big Brother Wei Jiang practicing his cannon fist?" "Linlin, don't give random pointers," said Ting Qingshan immediately. Then, he smiled and looked at Wei Jiang, who was practicing his fist technique on the front deck of the cruise ship. Wei Jiang and the other 2 young men were lucky enough to follow Ting Qingshan to the Xing-Yi sect in the Great Yin Mountain. Naturally, they received guidance from Ting Qingshan. The other 2 also had some foundation in the tiger form fist art. Ting Qingshan let one of them practice the slashing fist of the 5-element fist art. One was practicing collapsing fist. Of course, he also taught them unique training method. As for Wei Jiang, Ting Qingshan told him to focus on practicing the blast fist first. Because Ting Qingshan had reached emptiness culmination, he had a deep understanding of the Tao of the 5 elements. Therefore, the original Xing-Yi 5-element boxing was also modified by Ting Qingshan. He had even created quite a few unique training and fighting method. Wei Jiang is indeed a genius at practicing the internal martial art. As Ting Qingshan watched, he couldn't help but sigh. Even in the Xing-Yi sect, among the 3rd-generation disciples, there are no more than 10 who can compare to him in terms of comprehension. Emperor Yu's Hall. When he thought about how such a genius would have been taken away if he hadn't been there, Ting Qingshan couldn't help but feel angry. In the land of the 9 prefectures, there had been a tradition for thousands of years. If a cultivator wanted to join a sect, it was all up to the cultivator. There was no requirement. For example, Ting Qingshan could choose to join the Guiyuan sect. He could also choose to join Qing, Hu Island or other sects. This was very normal in the land of the 9 prefectures. This had been the case for generations. Other sects used all kinds of benefits to attract the cultivators of the internal martial art, but that was fine. After all, the cultivators of the internal martial art joined voluntarily. Unexpectedly, Emperor Yu's Hall actually used such a method to frame others. This made Ting Qingshan very angry. "Emperor Yu's Hall is too much," Li Jun couldn't help but say. Honglin said worriedly, "Father, Mother." What Father said was equivalent to slapping the face of Emperor Yu's Hall. "Isn't it too much?" "Ha." Ting Qingshan smiled as he looked at Honglin and said, "Linlin, you don't know much about my relationship with Emperor Yu's Hall. Let me tell you today. During the battle at Heavenly Cloud Mountain, if the Undying Phoenix and the others hadn't arrived, I would have died. When the Undying Phoenix arrived, Shengong Tu and Yu Tonghai were both killed. Since then, the Xing-Yi sect has always had a bad relationship with the Shooting Sun God Mountain and Emperor Yu's Hall. When the Xing-Yi sect was founded, they never came." Ting Qingshan smiled. "Since there is enmity between us, we are opposing sections. They want to kill me. Why should I give them face?" "Oh, is that so?" Honglin was shocked. She had heard of the story of how Ting Qingshan and Li Jun crossed the sea. However, she knew very little about the enmity between Ting Qingshan and the emptiness realm experts of the land of the 9 prefectures. This time, I said it in public. Let's see how Emperor Yu's Hall will respond. Ting Qingshan smiled faintly and said, unless they don't care about their dignity anymore. Indeed, when the bald elder, Hu Zhong, recorded Ting Qingshan's words in a letter and sent it to Emperor Yu's Hall, Emperor Yu's Hall was shocked. Then, Emperor Yu's Hall immediately sent it to the Blind Bear Mountain Range, outside the city, and presented it to the 2 supreme elders, Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin. On the first floor of the towering sacred palace in the Blind Bear Mountain Range. Martial ancestor, these are the words that Ting Qingshan left behind when he took away an internal martial art cultivator in the region of Yuzhou. He even asked someone to tell the 2 martial ancestors exactly what he said. An elder of Emperor Yu's Hall stood respectfully outside the Great Hall and handed over the letter in his hand. Ting Qingshan, Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin glanced at each other and frowned slightly. Naturally, the 2 of them wanted to kill Ting Qingshan as soon as possible. However, the current Ting Qingshan was not someone they could easily offend. Let's see what it says. Lu Xia opened the letter. The 2 emptiness realm culmination experts first sneered as they read the contents of the letter. However, their faces immediately turned red and then turned ashen. Lu Xia, who was holding the letter, was so angry that his right hand trembled. The contents of the letter were, go back and tell the supreme elders of Emperor Yu's Hall, Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin. It's fine if you use small favors to steal the internal martial art cultivator. However, the internal martial art cultivator is not willing to join Emperor Yu's Hall. Don't use such despicable means to frame and capture him. If word of this gets out, it will be a disgrace. Not only will it disgrace Emperor Yu's Hall, but it will also disgrace your founding ancestor, Emperor Yu. Indeed, it was exactly the same, word for word. You are going too far. Lu Xia couldn't help but roar angrily. Ting Qingshan. Huang Tianqin's face turned ashen. The 2 of them felt a surge of anger rush to the top of their heads, as if it was about to burst out. After a long time, the 2 supreme elders in the Great Hall finally calmed down. They glanced at each other and felt the bitterness and helplessness in each other's eyes. Ting Qingshan's words were like a slap to their faces. This was even worse than a slap to their faces. This was because Ting Qingshan had said this in public. It would spread. The billions of people in the land of the 9 prefectures would soon know about this. They would laugh at Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin for embarrassing the founding ancestor, Emperor Yu's Hall. There's nothing we can do. Lu Xia smiled bitterly and shook his head. Now Ting Qingshan is fully fledged. Huang Tianqin shook his head and said, even the honorable ones don't want to provoke Ting Qingshan. It's impossible for them to deal with Ting Qingshan. Moreover, Emperor Yu's Hall can't afford to be massacred by the undying phoenix. Huang Tianqin shuddered at the thought of how terrifying the undying phoenix was. Even the honorable ones didn't want to provoke it. What should we do now? Lu Xia looked at Huang Tianqin. What can we do? First, we have to detain them. The people we captured previously did have a criminal record. We have to stick to our guns and ignore everything else. Second, don't force the internal martial art cultivators. Even if we meet a genius, invite them first. If they can't be invited, kill them secretly. We can't leave any evidence, Huang Tianqin ordered. Ting Qingshan's words were spread by the caravan. From 1 to 10, from 10 to 100. In just 1 or 2 months, almost the entire land of the 9 prefectures was talking about this. For a time, Emperor Yu's Hall became a laughingstock. This also caused Emperor Yu's Hall. When the sects saw Emperor Yu's Hall's methods, they were tempted. The sects that planned to use such methods were so scared that they didn't dare to use such method. What do people seek in this world? To these super-powerful experts, their reputation was the most important thing. The reputation of a sect was even more important. Unless it was a matter of life and death, they wouldn't be so shameless. Under Ting Qingshan's guidance, Wei Jiang and the other two easily joined the Xing Yi sect. The other two became fifth-generation disciples. As for Wei Jiang, he was accepted by Ting Shou, a second-generation disciple, because he was extremely talented. He became a third-generation disciple. The Xing Yi sect did have such a rule. As long as one was extremely talented, he or she could become a disciple of a second-generation disciple, or an innate expert. Of course, it was impossible to become a disciple of Ting Qingshan. Even Meng Lutong and the others who had reached the Grandmaster realm, innate realm, could only receive pointers from Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan didn't directly become a disciple. Ting Qingshan only had 3 direct disciples: Ting Shou, Yang Dong, and Xuexin. During winter, the coldest place was naturally Yuzhou, which was located in the northeasternmost region. In a county city called Bloody Saber County in Yuzhou Province, a handsome and cold young man was pacing back and forth on the martial arts field as if he was thinking about something and was hesitating in a seemingly common mansion. Although it was snowing, a handsome and cold young man was pacing back and forth on the martial arts field as if he was thinking about something and hesitating. "Master, the snow is getting heavier," a maid came over and said respectfully. "Leave," the young man ordered indifferently. "Yes." The maid immediately left. The young man took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. He mumbled, "They are pushing Qinghu Island into danger again. Is Ting Qingshan so easy to deal with? Ting Qingshan, you destroyed Qinghu Island and caused countless casualties among my martial brothers. However, I owe you a great debt of gratitude. I can't let them do this. Taking revenge on Ting Qingshan won't do Qinghu Island any good. It will only make things worse." After stepping into the innate realm, Yan Danshan was very worried as he was one of the higher-ups of Qinghu Island. "Ting Qingshan. This time I, Yan Danshan, am repaying a debt of gratitude. After this, you and I are even. I only hope that Qinghu Island can rise again in my lifetime." The young man hesitated no more and immediately entered the study room. After closing the door, he immediately wrote a secret letter. 5 chapters were completed. After the annual meeting, Tomato's updates had been unstable. Yesterday there was only 1 chapter. Today there were 5 chapters. There were only 5 days left in March. Tomato said that it was going to erupt in March, but it was not intense enough. 3 chapters a day was not intense enough. It was the last 5 days. Tomato said one thing: the last 5 days at least 4 chapters a day. In other words, in the last 5 days, there would be at least 20 chapters. No matter which month it was, even if there was a lack of chapters, Tomato would completely make up for it on the last day of the month. He would definitely do what he said. In the last 5 days of the month, Tomato would crazily update to thank everyone for their support. In the VIP selling group, many readers subscribed to Tomato's book and kept voting. Tomato was really touched. It was Tomato who did not work hard enough. "I'm sorry for everyone's support. Go crazy. There are only a few fights in life. It was only the last 5 days. At most, Tomato would just stay in front of the computer for the next 5 days. Fight. At least 4 chapters a day. These 4 chapters were just the minimum. Tomato would not be satisfied with 4 chapters. Everyone just needs to keep their eyes open. Tomorrow, he would go berserk. Now, there was a gap of more than 1,600 votes. Tomato hoped that everyone would support Tomato in the last 5 days. Give your votes to Tomato. We only have one goal: first place in the monthly votes. Even if we lose, we will lose after doing our best. Thousands of words converged into one sentence. I need everyone's monthly votes. Voting method. Click recommend the author for monthly vote. Tomato thanks all the brothers who support Tomato. Thank you. Chapter 555. Currently, the great Yen mountain seemed to be covered in a layer of silver. Heavy snowflakes fluttered in the air like goose feathers. However, the disciples of the Xing-Yi sect in the great Yen mountain didn't mind. Many of them only wore unlined clothes and practiced their fist art in the snow. The sounds of breathing could be heard everywhere in the Xing-Yi sect. Many disciples were practicing with each other. Bang! Bang! The sound of fists hitting flesh could be heard clearly. In the Xing-Yi sect, there was a secluded mansion on one of the mountains, Mount Longhu. This was the residence of the substitute sovereign, Yang Dong. On the balcony of the third floor of a quiet pavilion in the mansion, Yang Dong, who was wearing a purple cloak, stood on the balcony. Because the mansion was located on the peak of Mount Longhu, he could see many places at the foot of the mountain. He could see thousands of disciples practicing their fist art. Yang Dong, who was married and had a child, looked much more mature than before. He also had a mustache. In the past, I only wanted to be a bandit leader. I didn't expect that I would be in charge of such a big sect. Yang Dong looked down at the thousands of disciples practicing their fist art. He suddenly felt proud. After all, Ting Qingshan was detached from worldly affairs and rarely interfered with the affairs of the sect. Moreover, Yang Dong was good at management. Yang Dong frowned and looked at the courtyard below. My lord, there is an important secret letter from Yu Zhou. Someone shouted from outside the courtyard. The maidservant in the courtyard looked up at Yang Dong. Yang Dong nodded slightly and the maidservant opened the door. Phew! Yang Dong floated down from the third floor and landed in the courtyard of the mansion. What secret letter? Why is it delivered to me so urgently? Yang Dong frowned. My lord, look. The young disciple immediately handed over the secret letter respectfully. Yang Dong took the letter and opened it. When he read it, his expression changed drastically. Who dares to do this? Yang Dong's eyes turned cold. You can leave now. Yang Dong waved his hand and said, Yes. The young disciple left. Yang Dong thought for a while in the snow and then walked outside. At this moment, a beautiful woman wearing a white cloak walked over and smiled. Dong, it's almost lunchtime. Are you still going out? Yes, I'll go to Master's place. I'll be back in a while, Yang Dong said and immediately left. He's going to the sect Master's place? The young woman watched in confusion as her husband left. Dong should be able to deal with most matters in the sect. We rarely trouble the sect master. What is it that we need to ask the sect master for? Under the pavilion, Ting Qingshan's family of 4 was eating lunch at an exquisitely made dark red wooden table. Eating lunch under the pavilion and watching the snowflakes fall around them was also a great joy. Master! Yang Dong walked in. Dong! Ting Qingshan smiled and put down his chopsticks. Have you eaten? Let's eat together. Yang Dong solemnly handed over a letter. Master, take a look at this. From Yang Dong's expression, Ting Qingshan sensed that something was wrong. Without caring about anything else, he immediately took the secret letter. Li Jun, Honglin, and Hongwu looked over curiously. Honglin muttered, Why are you acting so mysterious? What's the matter? Hua. Ting Qingshan opened the letter and read it. The letter was written by the owner of the Blood Knife County in Yuzhou, the owner of the Qingshan Enterprise. The letter said that a mysterious innate expert came to the owner of the Qingshan Enterprise last night. This innate expert masked his face and showed his strength. Then, he left a secret letter and left. The secret letter from the mysterious innate expert said, within a month's time, there would be an incident that targeted internal martial arts cultivators in the Yenzhou region of the 9 prefectures. What? Ting Qingshan's facial expression changed. Yenzhou? Li Jun, who was at the side, was also shocked when she read the letter. Qingshan, the Xing-Yi sect. There are many Qingshan enterprise halls in Yenzhou. Usually, we will accept many cultivators who want to join the Xing-Yi sect. Then, we will escort them all the way to Yangzhou. Every time, there will be hundreds or even thousands of people. Once the assassination happens. Ting Qingshan nodded his head slightly. Teacher, we have to guard against this, Yang Dong said hastily. Although this has never happened in Yenzhou for so many years, this news came from Yuzhou. Moreover, it came from a mysterious innate expert. Moreover, it was sent by a mysterious innate expert. We can't be careless. If it was an ordinary person, the substitute sovereign, Yang Dong, wouldn't even know about it. However, a mysterious innate expert leaked the news. The meaning of this was different. I understand. Ting Qingshan frowned. Which sect is so ruthless that they want to kill the internal martial arts cultivators? Ting Qingshan was puzzled. Yenzhou had a population of 200 to 300 million. Many of them practiced internal martial art. In addition, Yenzhou was the closest place to Yangzhou. Therefore, there were many cultivators of internal martial arts from other places. There were many cultivators from Yenzhou. Yenzhou and Qingzhou were the closest places to Yangzhou. Qingzhou was controlled by the Heavenly God Palace. The Heavenly God Palace was too powerful. Every year, there were cultivators from Qingzhou and Yuzhou who came to join the Xingyi sect, but not many. Yenzhou was different because the Shooting Sun God Mountain was afraid of Ting Qingshan. Ever since Shengong Tu died, the Shooting Sun God Mountain only had one Emptiness Realm expert and the Shooting Sun Heavenly Wolf. If Ting Qingshan helped the Guiyuan sect, he could easily destroy the Shooting Sun God Mountain. Therefore, the Shooting Sun God Mountain didn't dare to offend Ting Qingshan. The Qingshan enterprise was located in the Yenzhou region and received many people. Then, hundreds and thousands of people were escorted to Yangzhou. For so many years, the Shooting Sun God Mountain didn't dare to do anything. They were afraid that Ting Qingshan would take the opportunity to destroy the Shooting Sun God Mountain in a fit of rage. The Shooting Sun God Mountain didn't dare to do anything. Yang Dong shook his head and said, most of the other sects have a good relationship with the Xingyi sect. Only Emperor Yu's Hall and Mani Temple. However, Mani Temple only cares about their own territory. Therefore, only Emperor Yu's Hall is left. Emperor Yu's Hall? Ting Qingshan suddenly thought of something. Teacher, you said those ruthless words last time. Emperor Yu's Hall harbors hatred in their hearts. They might use such a sinister method. Yang Dong frowned and said, however, is Emperor Yu's Hall really that vengeful? Ting Qingshan narrowed his eyes. Ah Dong, Ting Qingshan said in a deep voice. Teacher. Yang Dong cupped his hands and said, ask your eldest martial brother to come here. Ting Qingshan ordered, immediately. Yes. Yang Dong didn't dare to hesitate and left. In the East Flower Garden, Ting Qingshan was no longer in the mood to eat. Li Jun couldn't help but ask, Qingshan, is Emperor Yu's Hall really so ruthless? Li Jun couldn't help but ask. I said those ruthless words and humiliated them. They might take revenge. Ting Qingshan shook his head and said, however, we don't have any evidence. Let's forget about it for now. No matter what, Yenzhou is the place where the Xingyi sect takes in the most disciples among the other 8 prefectures. Nothing can go wrong. After all, if a group of disciples were killed, it would be thousands of internal martial art cultivators. When he thought of those youths who dreamed of cultivating the internal martial art, thousands of them were slaughtered. Ting Qingshan was enraged and thought to himself, how dare they kill some youths? This news came so strangely that Ting Qingshan didn't dare to pretend that it didn't happen. Blade-like qi, Ting Qingshan said with the use of the sound transmission technique. Roar, a deep roar came from the depths of the great Yen Mountain. Soon, a beam of light flashed and landed in the middle of the courtyard with a bang. It had a tall body, blood-red eyes, 6 blade-like arms, and 2 pairs of wings that looked like a cloak. It was the 6-legged blade-like Qi teacher. A figure dashed in from the outside. A muscular man dressed in a black cloak walked in. He was the eldest martial brother of the Xingyi sect. Besides Ting Qingshan, he had the highest cultivation in the branch of internal martial art. Ting Qingshan looked at Ting Shou and praised him in his heart. In the past 16 years, his eldest disciple had cultivated from the early stage of the Supreme Force to the late stage of the Supreme Force. Although it took a full 15 years, Ting Qingshan was already very satisfied with this speed of improvement. Ah Shou. Ting Qingshan threw the secret letter in his hand and said, "Take a look at this first." Ting Shou took the letter and read it carefully. His facial expression changed as he raised his head and said, "Teacher, I feel that something is wrong," Ting Qingshan ordered. "Just in case, you will go with the blade-like qi this time. I will order the Qingshan enterprise in Yenzhou to stagger the time of sending disciples. Make sure that there is only one group of disciples at a time. When the time comes, you will hide your identity and blend in with the group. I will ask the blade-like qi to follow you secretly. If you encounter any danger, immediately call the blade-like qi and ask for help." "Yes," Ting Shou said hastily. "Remember, if someone comes to kill the group of disciples sent by the Qingshan enterprise, leave a few alive. It would be best to leave a few alive." Ting Qingshan said in a deep voice, "I want to find out who is behind this." Under Ting Qingshan's arrangement, the six-legged blade-like qi and Ting Shou left the Great Yen Mountain in the afternoon. At the same time, the Xing-Yi sect sent orders to all the Qingshan enterprise halls in Yenzhou. It was obvious that Ting Qingshan had set up a huge net in Yenzhou. They were just waiting for the other party to appear. Time flew, and it was the day of the yearly sacrifice. On the day of the yearly sacrifice, the entire Xing-Yi sect held a grand celebration. At night, the entire sect held a grand banquet. Teacher. At night, Yang Dong and Ting Qingshan walked in the sect and asked, "Eldest martial brother has gone to Yenzhou for more than half a month. However, there is no news at all. Is this news true?" "Don't worry." Ting Qingshan shook his head and said, "The secret letter says that he will stay in Yenzhou for 1 or 2 months. Let your eldest martial brother stay in Yenzhou for 3 months. If there is no news in 3 months, then he would ask the Qingshan enterprise to send their disciples in more batches. Send less than 100 disciples each time." "Yes." Yang Dong nodded slightly. Ever since Ting Shou came to Yenzhou, he had been busy. He didn't dare to relax for even a moment. However, it had been a whole month, and he didn't see anyone coming to kill him. "Teacher said that I have to stay for 3 months. Ting Shou thought to himself. At this moment, Ting Shou was in a majestic caravan of nearly 2,000 people. This caravan was the caravan of the Qingshan enterprise. Among the caravan were 1,081 internal martial art cultivators who wanted to join the Xing-Yi sect. There were only a few merchants in this caravan. Ting Shou raised his eyebrows. Chapter 556. There's movement. As an internal martial art cultivator who had cultivated to the late stage of the Supreme Force, Ting Shou's ears were extremely sensitive. He listened carefully. "Brother, how long do you think it will take us to reach the Xing-Yi sect?" "Haha, don't worry. We are already in the trade caravan of the guild hall. We will reach the Great Yen Mountain in 10 to 15 days. Then you will see what the holy land of internal martial art is like. You can only be a tyrant in our village with your martial arts. When you reach the Great Yen Mountain, you will know that there is always someone better than you." In the trade caravan, the thousands of young men were talking noisily. They were all happy that they were about to enter the Xing-Yi sect in the Great Yen Mountain. However, they didn't know that a disaster was about to befall them. Ting Shou's ears twitched. He eliminated the voices in the trade caravan and finally heard some faint voices in the distance. Because they were in the wilderness and the cold wind was strong, he couldn't hear them clearly. "There are people, and there are many of them." Ting Shou looked at the barren mountain in the distance that was covered with snow. Behind the barren mountain, a group of warriors wearing silver armor could be seen. They were all holding their breaths as they listened to their leader's orders. "Everyone, the army is trained for 1,000 days. Today, it's all up to you." The leader glanced at the people around him coldly and said in a deep voice, "In this trade caravan from the Qingshan trade caravan, there are thousands of internal martial art cultivators who want to join the Xing-Yi sect. If we attack, there will only be two results: we will die or they will all die." A deep and cold voice sounded behind the barren mountain. Yes. Over 100 people nodded. Their eyes were fierce. Attack. As soon as the leader gave the order, over 100 warriors wearing silver armor and carrying bows and arrows on their backs immediately rushed out from behind the barren mountain. The trade caravan was like a long dragon moving slowly on the official road. Ting Shou's attention was completely focused on the barren mountain. Phew, phew, the cold wind whistled in the wilderness. Suddenly, there were sounds of rapid footsteps. "Bandits! Be careful!" Ting Shou roared fiercely. His roar instantly tore apart the silence. The entire caravan almost made a "hua" sound. Everyone started to shrink towards the center in a practiced manner. At the same time, the guards of the caravan all pulled out their weapons. Or with bows and arrows in their hands, they instantly got into formation. It was common for merchant caravans to face bandits, so they were very familiar with this. Ting Shou did not want the caravan to panic, so he shouted, "There are bandits. How dare you rob us? Courting death." Many hot-blooded youngsters and teenagers were holding long spears in their hands, while some of them were holding swords and sabers. All of them were eager to have a try. They were like wild beasts looking at their prey, staring at the hundreds of silent warriors in silver armors who were rushing out from the distance. However, these bandits are actually all wearing armor. Moreover, their armor is not of ordinary inferior quality. The disciples of the internal martial arts quickly became vigilant. "Who?" A slightly taller man in silver armor raised his right hand. Instantly, over 100 people stopped at the same time. The caravan of Qingshan Enterprise was taken aback by the strict execution of the order. To be able to notice the leader's hand gestures while running at top speed was not something an ordinary elite team could do. "Your reaction is quite fast." A deep voice came from the mouth of the man in silver armor. Originally, he wanted to rush forward and start a massacre, but he did not expect that the other party would discover him so quickly and react so quickly. Since he could not catch them off guard, then he would fight them head-on. Hua! Over 100 silent warriors simultaneously picked up the longbows on their backs, instantly pulled the bowstrings and nocked arrows. All the arrows were aimed in the direction of the caravan. Many of the guards in the caravan also held bows and arrows in their hands, ready to shoot at any time. "Who are you?" "This is the caravan of Qingshan Enterprise Hall. Quickly retreat or else we will have to fight." The leader of the caravan shouted coldly. "Not good, their arrows are poisoned." Suddenly, someone in the caravan shouted. Obviously, the cold arrowheads of these silent warriors had a faint blue color. Hearing that the arrows were poisoned, the leader's face darkened and immediately shouted, "Shoot! Xiao! Xiao! Xiao!" Immediately, hundreds of arrows pierced through the air. Over 100 silent warriors only dodged slightly, and only 20% of them were hit by the arrows. However, they all made a clang sound, and after the arrows flew for tens of zhang, they were unable to penetrate the silver armor of these silent warriors. The leader laughed coldly. "Everyone, kill them all!" He gave the order. Immediately, over 100 silent warriors shot the arrows in their hands at the same time. The arrowheads flickered with a blue poisonous light, and the moment they left the bows, a roar that caused people's hearts to tremble suddenly sounded from underground and spread out in the wilderness. At the same time, a blurry figure instantly appeared in front of the caravan, and a hurricane was generated out of thin air. The powerful hurricane blew wildly, lifting up a large amount of snow, stones, and soil, and sweeping towards over 100 warriors. The speed of the arrows was greatly reduced in the hurricane, and some of them were even scattered and blown back. Only a few arrows that were shot at the faraway areas were not affected. Phew, the hurricane howled, sending sand and stones flying everywhere. The originally confident hundreds of silent martial artists were shocked. Under the hurricane, they couldn't even see what was in front of them. Some of the martial artists couldn't help but be blown into the air. Even after using techniques such as thousand gene drop, it was still difficult for them to stand firmly. Where did this strange wind come from? Many warriors were slightly shocked and confused. Split up! The leader shouted hastily, rushed to the back of the barren mountain. Over 100 warriors immediately rushed to the back of the barren mountain. After all, this hurricane couldn't blow away a small mountain. The hurricane that had appeared out of nowhere suddenly disappeared again. Sensing the disappearance of the hurricane, many silver-armored warriors who had already rushed to the side of the barren mountain turned their heads in confusion. They saw the six-legged blade-like chi hovering in front of the caravan. Just now, it had relied on its 2 pairs of wings to create that terrifying hurricane and blow away the arrows. The blades on the 6-legged blade-like chi's 4 arms and 2 legs all flashed with a cold luster. Its blood-red eyes were even more terrifying. It's the emptiness realm demonic beast, blade-like chi. The leader's face instantly turned pale as he roared, "Run!" Too late. Ting Shou, who was in the caravan, revealed a grim smile. Roar! The 6-legged blade-like chi's blood-red eyes flashed. Then, all the densely packed sharp spikes on one of its blade-like arms flew out and hovered in front of it. A total of 100 sharp spikes were arranged neatly in a row. 10 sharp spikes were arranged neatly in a row, hovering in front of it. Then, buzz! The 100 sharp spikes instantly pierced through the air. The speed of the sharp spikes was astonishing. How could they be dodged so easily? Over 100 silver-armored warriors in front of the barren mountain. Poochie! Poochie! The sharp spikes instantly pierced through the armor. In front of the 6-legged blade-like chi's sharp spikes, the armor was like paper. Fresh blood flowed out from the holes. Plop! Plop! One by one, the warriors fell to the ground with a loud bang. However, the 6-legged blade-like chi's sharp spikes attack was an area attack. It could only target a rough area and control over 100 sharp spikes at once. The 6-legged blade-like chi couldn't control each spike separately. As a result, this move of the 6-legged blade-like chi was most effective when facing a densely packed army. If the army was too scattered, the 100 sharp spikes would only be able to kill 10 to 20 warriors. This time, the 6-legged blade-like chi only managed to kill 18 warriors with one wave. Phew! However, the 100 sharp spikes actually gathered again and sifted the army again. The group of warriors was like a target. Why is there an emptiness realm demonic beast here? Why is it like this? Many warriors who had been silent all this while roared angrily. Someone snitched. Who betrayed us? Every silver-armored warrior roared angrily. Kill! Kill! This group of silver-armored warriors went berserk. They roared as they spread apart from each other. Then, they madly rushed towards the caravan. At the same time, the surviving silver-armored warriors all drew their bows. For an army of nearly 2,000 people, this was an extremely long distance. Whoosh! 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 While the 6-legged blade-like chi slaughtered the warriors, it also shot arrows towards various parts of the caravan. Because the range of the arrows was too wide, the 6-legged blade-like chi couldn't block many of the arrows in time. Poochie! Poochie! The 100 sharp spikes of the 6-legged blade-like chi sifted the army again. There were originally more than 100 martial artists, but only a dozen or so were still running. Who betrayed us? Who is it? As the group of warriors roared angrily, they actually took out a ball from their bosoms and threw it towards the caravan. Hold your breath. A loud roar resounded through the entire caravan. Then, a yellow mist spread out. The six-legged blade-like Chi transformed into a shadow and killed the 10 warriors within the time it took to take a breath. From the beginning to the end, the group of powerful warriors didn't engage in close combat with the caravan at all. The six-legged blade-like Chi's speed was too fast. Moreover, its group attack ability was too shocking. The caravan quickly stabilized. "How is it?" Ting Shou said with a frown. The leader of the caravan had a trace of anger on his face as he said respectfully, "This group of martial artists is too ruthless. Their poisoned arrows are deadly. Among our caravan, 2 guards, a merchant, and 2 internal martial art youths have unfortunately lost their lives." Ting Shou's facial expression changed. Moreover, their blades and swords were poisoned. The leader of the caravan gnashed his teeth and said, "If it weren't for you, I'm afraid that the 100 of them would have killed everyone in our caravan." They could all tell that the 100 warriors were the elites of the elite. The youths who had just started learning the internal martial arts could not compare to them. Among the heavily injured warriors, when we captured them alive, 3 of our guards were accidentally killed by them. The leader of the caravan suppressed his anger and said, "Then, all the survivors committed suicide." Ting Shou's facial expression became even more unsightly. "Investigate them. Find out their identities from their appearances." Ting Shou said in a deep voice, "I don't believe that the weakest among this group of experts is a first-rate, second-rate warrior. Moreover, there are over 100 of them, yet we can't find a single trace of them. Also, investigate their blades, swords, and armors." Second chapter, continue writing the third chapter. Chapter 557. Late at night. In the East Flower Garden of the Xingyi sect, the candles in Ting Qingshan's study room were still lit. Light could be seen from outside the study room. In the study, Ting Qingshan sat in front of his desk, carefully reading the information that was sent to him. It recorded the course of events, as well as some speculations. How vicious! Even the weapons and arrows were poisoned. It was obvious that he wanted to wipe out this caravan. These are all teenagers, yet this group of people actually dared to do it. "If you have a grudge against me, Ting Qingshan, you can just come after me, Ting Qingshan. How dare you resort to such shameless methods?" Ting Qingshan's killing intent surged and his eyes flashed with coldness. This group of intercepting martial artists made Ting Qingshan shudder with fear. He would rather commit suicide than be captured. The more he felt that his opponent was ruthless, the angrier Ting Qingshan became. "Don't let me find out. Once I find out who the culprit is." Ting Qingshan was definitely not a good person. When he was 17 years old, during the battle at the Great Yen Mountain, his father, uncle, and the others had suffered a calamity. Although Ting Qingshan's strength was far inferior to Qinghu Islands, he still dared to take revenge. Moreover, the current Ting Qingshan had no one in the world that he truly needed to look up to. The Xingyi sect immediately activated their greatest power and started to investigate the identities of the more than 100 people who had died. One had to know that there were over 100 sets of high-grade armor, weapons, and poisons. They were all breakthroughs in the investigation. Moreover, there were over 100 powerful martial artists, so it was unlikely that all of them were nobodies. In just 7 short days there was a shocking result. In the morning, in the parterre of the East Flower Garden, a young girl dressed in purple was holding a long spear and practicing her spear technique. At the side, Ting Qingshan was watching with a smile. "Father, how was my practice?" After Hong Lin stopped, her cheeks flushed. She looked at Ting Qingshan with a smile. "It does look like it. However, you're pursuing Shadow Spear, although it has that unending feeling, it's still not enough. But, it lacks a little bit of ruthlessness." Ting Qingshan extended his hand, and the long spear in Hong Lin's hand was teleported into Ting Qingshan's hand. "Look carefully." collapsing fist like an arrow. This pursuing shadow spear must also be like an arrow leaving the bow. As he spoke, Ting Qingshan easily grabbed a long spear with one hand and held it horizontally. Then, he spun it and stabbed. Pucci! The air seemed to be pierced. Also, Linlin, Ting Qingshan said with a smile, now, your bursting fist and pursuing shadow spear art can be considered to have reached the initial success stage. From today onwards, when you practice bursting fist, no matter if your feet are improving or regressing, only half a step is allowed. Half step? Honglin shook her head. It's too short. It's not strong enough. Ting Qingshan smiled and said, if you're not used to it, use iron chains to lock your feet. No matter if your feet are improving or regressing, only half a step is allowed. When will you truly master the half-step bursting fist? You will only be able to reach the Grandmaster innate realm. Since his son's talent in martial arts wasn't considered outstanding, he could only train his daughter well. Honglin nodded. Teacher! At this moment, a person walked over from afar. It was Yang Dong, senior martial brother Yang. Honglin smiled and greeted him. Yang Dong smiled and nodded. Then, he whispered to Ting Qingshan, Teacher, the results have been found. Found? Ting Qingshan's facial expression changed. Let's go. Ting Qingshan immediately brought his disciple to the study room. After the door was closed with a squeak, Yang Dong immediately took out a piece of information respectfully and said, Teacher, this is the result of the investigation from eldest martial brother's side. Teacher, take a look. With a cold face, Ting Qingshan took the piece of information from his disciple's hands. According to the information, the investigation started with the weapons, armor, and the identity of the martial artist. However, it was obvious that the difficulty of investigating the weapons was higher. Among the over 100 martial artists, the identities of 3 had been found. 3. Ting Qingshan nodded to himself. There were countless martial artists in the land of the 9 prefectures. Many of them were unknown in their sections. It was already very difficult for the Xing Yi-Sex Information Network to be able to find out the identities of these 3 people. Guojieshio? Ganzitao? Ting Qingshan looked at the first 2 names and his facial expression changed. According to the information, these 2 people were members of Emperor Yu's Hall. Emperor Yu's Hall. Ting Qingshan was enraged. It's fine if they want to attract the disciples of the branch of internal martial art with small favors. It's fine if they want to frame us. I didn't expect them to be so insatiable. They actually dared to slaughter the disciples of the Xing Yi sect. There was no founding master who could remain calm when someone tried to slaughter over 1,000 of his disciples with sinister methods. Glory, reputation. It was all achieved with one's fists. Yang Dong, who was at the side, felt that his teacher Ting Qingshan's eyes were as dazzling and frightening as lightning. The murderous aura also shocked him. This is... After reading the detailed introduction of Guojieshio and Ganzitao, Ting Qingshan flipped to the next page and saw the third person. He couldn't help but be shocked. Chu Xinglong? Qinghu Island? Ting Qingshan was originally angry because of these 2 people. He even wanted to go to Emperor Yu's hall to settle the score. But now, he felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on him. Qinghu Island? Ting Qingshan frowned. Why are there people of Qinghu Island among them? Teacher. Yang Dong cupped his hands and said, I have already seen them. I am also confused. Why are there people of Qinghu Island among these 3 people? Ting Qingshan shook his head and said with a frown, Back then, I killed the blind sword master of Qinghu Island and captured the island lord, Taipan, alive. After that, the entire Qinghu Island fell apart and completely collapsed. Only a few loyal people hid in various places and prepared to make a comeback. Most of them have already dispersed and live ordinary lives. However, why is this Chu Xinglong among them? Ting Qingshan frowned. Teacher. Yang Dong said solemnly, in my opinion, there are two possibilities. First, the remnants of Qinghu Island might be behind this incident. They want to take revenge. Therefore, they gathered some people. Guojieshio and Gan Zitao, the two people of Emperor Yu's hall, were among them. This means that Emperor Yu's hall can't escape responsibility. Second, this incident is completely the revenge of Emperor Yu's hall. When Qinghu Island was destroyed, many disciples of Qinghu Island left Yangzhou one after another. Or they became soldiers of Emperor Yu's hall. Or they joined other sections. This Chu Xinglong might have joined after Qinghu Island was destroyed. He might have joined Emperor Yu's hall. This time, over 100 people were all organized by Emperor Yu's hall. Yang Dong said these two possibilities. Ting Qingshan nodded. He couldn't help but clench his teeth and frown. His heart was filled with doubt and uncertainty. Teacher, what should we do? Yang Dong asked. This incident has been strange since the beginning. Ting Qingshan frowned and said, a mysterious innate expert leaked information to Emperor Yu's hall. Then, this incident happened. However, although it's strange, this incident is definitely related to Emperor Yu's hall. Because of his doubts, Ting Qingshan didn't plan to go to Emperor Yu's hall immediately. Continue to investigate. Those armors and weapons. How did the over 100 people appear? Investigate their whereabouts carefully. Ting Qingshan ordered. Although he was angry at Emperor Yu's hall, Ting Qingshan didn't want to kill his way to Emperor Yu's hall before he figured out the truth. In the blink of an eye, it was already March. In March, the entire Yangzhou was filled with the singing of birds and the fragrance of flowers. At the foot of the Great Yen Mountain, many tourists came to see the sacred land of internal martial arts. Naturally, a flourishing town was formed at the foot of the Great Yen Mountain. Brother, the three of us went through many hardships from Yuzhou to the Great Yen Mountain and joined the Xing-Yi sect. It has been 8 years now. Junior Marshal brother, when you go back to visit your relatives, you should also visit my father and mother. Here is some silver. Please take it with you. In a restaurant, 3 young men were drinking and chatting. One of them, a handsome young man wearing a green cloak, nodded and sighed. It has been 8 years. I don't know how my adoptive father has been these 8 years. Sigh, I'm unfilial. I haven't been by his side for 8 years. I just asked someone to take some silver back. Brother, you are the most powerful among the 3 of us. The most promising one was now a corporal in the Blood Wolf army. If your adoptive father knew, he would be very happy. Junior Marshal brother Gongyu. Another short and fat man smiled and said, a man's ambition is to travel far and wide. Your adoptive father also asked you to come with us. Unfortunately, we can't go back just because we want to. No matter which sect, as long as one was a disciple, there was a limit to the number of times one could visit one's relatives. The further one's home was, the greater the limit. After all, some places were tens of thousands of li away. A round trip could take more than half a year. How could that be? If they were allowed to visit their relatives once a year, that would be equivalent to traveling for more than half a year. All right, senior marshal brothers. Let's not talk anymore. It's about time. The trade caravan from the guild is gathering. The young man named Gongyu stood up. The 2 young men who saw him off also stood up. No need to see me off. Senior marshal brothers, I will leave first. Gongyu cupped his hands and said, be careful on the road. The 2 young men watched as the man named Gongyu left. In the town, the trade caravan from the Qingshan Guild was gathering. This time, Gongyu left with the trade caravan and headed to Yuzhou to visit his relative. Everyone is here. Let's go. The leader of the trade caravan ordered. Immediately, this trade caravan of almost 1,000 people left the Great Yen Mountain and headed towards Yuzhou. On the desolate official road, the young man named Gongyu rode on a horse and followed the trade caravan. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the Great Yin Mountain. At this distance, the Great Yin Mountain was already a blur. Gongyu thought to himself, Xing Yi sect. Teacher, martial brothers. I'm sorry. You can't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame that Ting Qingshan. 8 years. 8 years. During these 8 years, I was a disciple of the Xing Yi sect. I was a corporal of the Blood Wolf army. From now on, I am no longer a corporal. A cold light flashed in Gongyu's eyes. This is the 3rd chapter. Tomato, continue writing the 4th chapter. I will definitely fulfill my promise, brothers. Give me a few monthly votes as well. Let's encourage each other. Chapter 558. In Yenzhou, the Xing Yi sect spent a lot of time and energy investigating the mysterious group of people that attacked the caravan of Qingshan Enterprise. However, in the end, they didn't find any useful information. Ting Qingshan could only suppress his anger. At the same time, he ordered the spies of the Xing Yi sect to monitor Emperor Yu's hall more closely. In the hot summer, in the training room of the East Flower Garden, the training room was 10 zhang long, 8 zhang wide, and 5 zhang high. The door was closed, and only a sliver of light shone through the crack. In the training room, only Ting Qingshan was there. He wore a loose shirt and was barefoot. He held the reincarnation spear in his hand and closed his eyes to adjust his state of mind. He was training the Tao of Spear. Swoosh! A cold light flashed in the training room. The reincarnation spear suddenly transformed into a huge python and danced crazily. After that, the entire training room seemed to have turned into a monstrous ocean. A silver-scaled flood dragon soared in the ocean. Sometimes it tore the sky apart and sometimes it dashed into the ocean. Suddenly, the entire ocean seemed to collapse. Strangely, the endless amount of seawater surrounded the long spear. Suddenly, the long spear was the only thing left in the world. Pooh! The heavens and the earth seemed to be split open. In the dark and enclosed training room, Ting Qingshan constantly pondered over his Tao of Spear, perfecting his Tao of Spear. For the past 17 years, he had been training diligently. Ever since he reached the culmination of the Wood Elemental Tao last year, he naturally reached the culmination of the 5 Elemental Tao. Ting Qingshan had been pondering, to combine the power of the heavens and the earth of the 5 Elemental Taos perfectly and form the most powerful spear move. If the power of the heavens and the earth of the 5 Elemental Taos was in its perfect state, it should be able to unleash 120% of its power. In the 36 splitting mountain forms, there were a few moves that could unleash such power. However, that was with an axe. Ting Qingshan had already given up on using an axe and focused on cultivating the spear art. He had trained for 16 years before he reached the Emptiness Realm culmination and 1 year after he reached the Emptiness Realm culmination. In the Tao of the 5 Elemental Taos, there was only one move that satisfied him. The 5 elements reinforce and counteract each other. Water begets wood, wood begets fire, fire begets earth, earth begets metal, metal begets water. Water gave birth to wood. The cycle repeated itself, forming a perfect cycle. It was as if the Tao of Yin and Yang circulated endlessly. However, everyone understood this logic. To truly achieve the greatest effect of the 5 elemental power of heaven and earth in one move, it is very difficult. Ting Qingshan had been pondering this point. Now, he was only satisfied with one move. His goal was a full 5 spear moves. Clang! In the dark training room, Ting Qingshan threw the reincarnation spear onto the weapon rack at the side. 17 years of bitter cultivation. With the water element as the main element, I formed a perfect cycle and created this strongest spear technique. Since this spear strike was based on the water element and the 5 elements were exerted together, Ting Qingshan named it the 5 Elemental Toxic Dragon Drill. According to Ting Qingshan's assumption, there should be 5 moves, and all of them contained the power of the 5 elements. It should be the 5 elemental Crimson Tiger Roar, the 5 elemental Splitting Mountain, the 5 elemental Shadow, and the 5 elemental Primordial Unity Energy. The name was tacky and simple. Actually, no matter how fancy the name was, it was still the same move. Virtuous like water, water benefits all living things but doesn't compete. I can focus on the water element. I created the 5 elemental Toxic Dragon Drill. However, I can't create the other 4 moves. Ting Qingshan shook his head. This means that my comprehension of the Tao of heaven and earth isn't thorough enough. If I can create the strongest spear technique with the other 4 moves, I should be able to step into the insightful emptiness realm. Ting Qingshan's thinking was wrong. He could turn the 5 elemental Tao he comprehended into a fist technique. The level of comprehension was already extremely high. Only then could he spend 17 years to create such a peak move. To be able to create such a move was already very abnormal. If he could create 5 moves, it meant that he had an extreme understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth, omnipotent expert. To create 5 moves, one had to have an extreme understanding of the 5 elements. Only omnipotent experts could do that. However, Ting Qingshan didn't have anyone to teach him. He had to figure everything out by himself. Of course, he didn't understand. He only wanted to work hard to create the other 4 moves. I should focus on the 5 elemental Tao. The deeper my comprehension is, the closer I am to the insightful emptiness realm, Ting Qingshan thought to himself. Ting Qingshan frowned. He could feel the aura of his second disciple, Yang Dong, outside. Why is Dong here? Ting Qingshan didn't hesitate. He took a shower in the cultivation room, changed his clothes, and put on his shoes. Then, he opened the door of the cultivation room. Rumble, the 2 stone doors of the cultivation room slowly opened to the sides. Light shone in from the outside, and the heat of the summer immediately permeated the room. Ting Qingshan immediately saw Yang Dong, who had an anxious look on his face. His son, Hongwu, was beside him, and he seemed to be anxious too. Teacher! Father! Yang Dong and Hongwu hurried over. What happened? Ting Qingshan asked. Teacher. Yang Dong handed over a letter and said at the same time, "We just received news that Emperor Yu's Hall has the secret cultivation technique of the Xing-Yi sect, the Cannon Fist. Among the cultivators of the branch of internal martial art recruited by Emperor Yu's Hall, many of them have already cultivated the Cannon Fist." Although Yang Dong had given Ting Qingshan a secret letter, he couldn't help but say it out loud. What? Ting Qingshan's facial expression changed drastically. He hastily opened the letter and read it. How could the secret cultivation technique be leaked? Ting Qingshan's facial expression changed, and he became slightly anxious. And it's the Cannon Fist of the 5 elemental fist? In the branch of internal martial art, the 12 forms of Xing-Yi were the foundation. However, it was impossible to reach the culmination of the tiger form fist art alone. Even Wei Jiang, who had cultivated the tiger form fist art to the pinnacle, was only a first-rated warrior. However, the 5 elemental fist was different. In Ting Qingshan's previous life, the famous grandmasters of the Xing-Yi martial art all relied on the bursting fist, slashing fist, and cannon fist. Only by cultivating the 5 elemental fist could one hope to reach the grandmaster realm. Therefore, in the Xing-Yi sect, the 5 types of fist techniques, the collapsing fist, the blast fist, and the 5 fists were not easily taught to the disciples. Even if they were taught, they couldn't teach them all at once. Instead, they would teach them step by step. They would first teach the foundation and then gradually teach them the killer move. The secret cultivation technique of the cannon fist was leaked. Ting Qingshan was very anxious. It was completely possible for the cultivators of the internal martial art to reach the Grandmaster realm by relying on the two secret cultivation techniques, the tiger form fist art and the cannon fist. Dong. I have given you strict orders. Ting Qingshan stared at Yang Dong and said, in the Xing Yi sect, only the elite disciples can be taught the bursting fist and the other 5 elemental fist art. The teaching is also done gradually. Only those with a clean background, absolute loyalty, and excellent aptitude can receive the full teaching. Tell me, which cultivation method and fighting method is the cannon fist that Emperor Yu's Hall obtained? The cultivation technique of the cannon fist had been modified by Ting Qingshan. After the system summarized it, there were a total of 9 types. Teacher, it's on the second last page of the secret letter, Yang Dong said. Ting Qingshan was also very worried. He didn't have the mood to read the letters carefully. Tell me, Ting Qingshan shouted. According to the investigation, it should be the cultivation technique of the 9 Emperor Cannon Fist, Yang Dong answered. The 9 Emperor Cannon Fist. Ting Qingshan frowned and said, in the Xing Yi sect, there shouldn't be many people who learned the 9 Emperor Cannon Fist. Did you find out? Not yet. I rushed over as soon as I got the news. Yang Dong answered, however, I have already told Elder Zong and asked him to investigate immediately. Once he found out, he will tell teacher. Ting Qingshan could only suppress his anxiety. The weather was hot and Ting Qingshan was very anxious. The leaking of secret manuals could be a big or small matter. For sects like Emperor Yu's Hall and the Heavenly God Palace, it was fine if a secret manual was leaked. This was because the Taoist sects had spread everywhere. It wasn't worth keeping it a secret. However, Ting Qingshan was the only sect that knew the internal martial art. Once the bursting fist and other fist techniques were leaked, then the branch of internal martial arts would probably have a second sect. Father, drink some tea. Han Wu held a cup of tea. I'm not in the mood. Ting Qingshan suddenly turned his head and looked at the door. Soon, a figure appeared at the door. It was Elder Zong Lu. Uncle Zong, did you find out? Ting Qingshan hastily walked over. Sovereign, look. Elder Zong Lu handed over a piece of paper and said, in the Xing Yi sect, most of the disciples are still cultivating the foundation of the 12 forms of Xing Yi sect. Only a small number of disciples learned the 5-element fist. Among them, a total of 3,218 people were taught the cannon fist. However, only 291 people learned the 9th Emperor Cannon Fist. Ting Qingshan looked at the piece of paper. Among these 291 people, Zong Lu continued, 283 of them have extremely clean backgrounds. The remaining 8 people also had relatively clean backgrounds. However, these 8 people all had the experience of being orphans and beggars. Logically speaking, there should be no problem. However, in the 3rd month of this year, one of the remaining 8 people is called Gongyu. Zong Lu frowned and said, he went home to visit his family in March. Visit his family? Ting Qingshan frowned and asked, where is his hometown? Yes, visit his family. He is from Yuzhou. Moreover, he was an orphan since he was young. His foster father, a bachelor, adopted him. In that village, he learned the tiger form fist art. Zong Lu said, Sovereign, don't worry. According to the records, Gongyu's 9th Emperor Cannon Fist is only at the initial level. Due to his background, his teacher hasn't had the time to teach him the essence of the later parts. Ting Qingshan nodded slightly. In the Xing Yi sect, if one wanted to learn the Cannon Fist or one of the other 5 elemental fists, it was very difficult. Because the teacher taught them step by step, there were no written manuals. The teacher would only teach them step by step. The higher your realm was, the more he would teach you. After all, it was useless to bite off more than one could chew. Teaching them less could prevent it from being leaked. If we only rely on the incomplete version of the 9th Emperor Cannon Fist that Gongyu obtained, If we continue to cultivate the tiger form fist, we can at most become a first-rated warrior, Zhong Lu said with certainty. Ting Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the previous teaching strategy was correct. We can't let this bad trend spread. Ting Qingshan's eyes turned cold. Today, Emperor Yu's hall stole a cannon fist. In the future, other sects will steal another fist art. What will happen in the long run? Moreover, Gongyu dared to betray the Xing Yi sect. He is also the first disciple to betray the Xing Yi sect. We can't just punish him. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. This was the first time a secret manual was leaked. This was the first time a disciple betrayed the sect. We must punish him severely. This is the end of the 4th chapter, there is still the 5th chapter today. Tomato continues to write, actually, Tomato just wants the monthly ticket in everyone's pocket. Vote for Tomato. Chapter 559. That's right. We can't simply deal with him. As the substitute sovereign, Yang Dong understood the importance of this matter. He said solemnly, the cannon fist is a consummate technique of the Xing Yi sect. This leak must be dealt with harshly. He wanted to intimidate all the sects in the world so that such a thing would never happen again. The best way is to start with Emperor Yu's hall. Immediately after, Yang Dong looked at Ting Qingshan awkwardly and said, Teacher, are we going to start with Emperor Yu's hall? Emperor Yu's hall was the oldest sect in the land of the 9 prefectures. Was he someone to be trifled with? Sovereign, if we want to deal with Emperor Yu's hall, we have to think about it carefully, Zhong Lu said with a frown. In the land of the 9 prefectures, who wouldn't feel heavy at the mention of Emperor Yu's hall? The oldest sect, the sect founded by Emperor Yu, had existed until now. How could it not have any trump cards? Father. Hongwu pondered and said, Father, are you really going to attack Emperor Yu's hall? As I see it, we must first make it clear, first of all, how sure are we of it? One cannot go for wool and come home shorn. Also, if this plan fails, what will happen to the Xing Yi sect? Will the Xing Yi sect be able to bear the consequences? What are the benefits if we succeed? Ting Qingshan couldn't help but look at his son with a smile. In terms of meticulousness, this son, who was very good at business, was much better than his daughter. In fact, there were many things that he could not see through as clearly as his son. Master, you have to think about this carefully. Can you do it? No matter how much of a bandit Yang Dong was, he wouldn't dare to act recklessly when it came to the most ancient sect in the 9 prefectures. Ting Qingshan closed his eyes and calmed himself down. Yang Dong, Elder Zhong Lu, and Hongwu looked at each other. They didn't dare to say anything to disturb Ting Qingshan's thoughts. They could only wait quietly at the side. After all, Ting Qingshan was the sovereign of the Xing Yi sect and the founder of the internal martial art. In the Xing Yi sect, Ting Qingshan had absolute authority. The Xing Yi sect was ruled by Ting Qingshan. If he said he would do it, then he would naturally do it. The 3 of them were waiting for Ting Qingshan's decision. In terms of strength, no emptiness realm expert under the insightful emptiness realm is a match for me. In terms of speed, the undying phoenix Little Blue can be said to be number 1 in the 9 prefectures once it uses the ultimate skill that its mother taught it. Compared to me, Emperor Yu's hall is at a great disadvantage. If we really fight, there's a chance that Little Qing and I can take care of Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin one after another. Ting Qingshan made many calculations in his mind. What he was most uncertain about now was, this was the reason why Emperor Yu's hall could exist for 6,000 years. Based on what? No matter what, according to my investigation, it's impossible. For so many years, Emperor Yu's hall had been holed up in Yuzhou. Back then, the king of the northeast, Hong Tian, had conquered the world. Emperor Yu's hall was still holed up in their own territory. He doesn't dare to provoke Hong Tian? Ting Qingshan deduced from this. Even if this trump card is powerful, there's no need to be too afraid. Otherwise, how could Emperor Yu's Hall not have any reaction when Yu Tonghai was burned to death by the undying phoenix? F***CK. If we're going to do it, let's do it big. Since I want to intimidate the land of the 9 prefectures, I want the supreme sects to not dare to steal the cultivation technique of the Xing-Yi sect. I want to let them know the consequences of stealing the cultivation technique of the Xing-Yi sect. Then, I'll choose the oldest sect as my target. This will be the best way to intimidate others. Ting Qingshan instantly made up his mind. In the courtyard, Yang Dong, Zhong Lu, and Han Wu were silently waiting for Ting Qingshan, who had his eyes closed and was deep in thought. No one dared to disturb Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes. Father? Teacher? Sovereign? The 3 of them spoke at the same time. Ting Qingshan smiled at them. His eyes lit up as he said in a sonorous voice, Emperor Yu's Hall robbed and killed the caravan of Qingshan Enterprise. They can't get away with it. Now they want to steal the cultivation technique of the Xing-Yi sect. How can the Xing-Yi sect lower our heads? This time, I will personally go to Emperor Yu's Hall. Yang Dong, Zhong Lu, and Han Wu stared at each other. Were they really going to attack Emperor Yu's Hall? Uncle Zhong. Ting Qingshan looked at Zhong Lu. Yes, Zhong Lu hastily responded. Prepare the evidence of Emperor Yu's Hall sending men to rob and kill the caravan of Qingshan Enterprise in Yenzhou. I will bring the evidence to Emperor Yu's Hall. Question them face to face. Ting Qingshan was very clear about this. Yes. Zhong Lu immediately walked over and prepared the evidence. Ting Qingshan used the use of the sound transmission technique to communicate with his wife, Li Jun Qingshan. Li Jun quickly rushed over from another courtyard and said with a smile, What's the matter? Little Jun, ask the blade-like Qi to go to the desolate land. Ask Little Blue to come here, Ting Qingshan said. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Li Jun glanced at Ting Qingshan with a smile. However, she still raised her head and roared. Soon, the 6-legged blade-like Qi's deep roar sounded from the depths of the great Yen mountain. Soon, the 6-legged blade-like Qi flew over. Ting Qingshan looked at Yang Dong. Ah Dong, Ting Qingshan said solemnly. Yes, Yang Dong answered respectfully. This traitor Gongyu is the first traitor of the Xing-Yi sect. We can't let him go easily. We must capture him at all costs. I want all the disciples of the Xing-Yi sect to know the consequences of betraying the sect by leaking the secret technique. A murderous intent flashed in Ting Qingshan's eyes. If a disciple betrayed the sect for a special reason, it would be fine. Everyone had a balance in their hearts. When Ting Qingshan betrayed the Guiyuan sect, everyone knew that Ting Qingshan didn't want to implicate the Guiyuan sect. He didn't want Qinghu Island to find an excuse to take revenge. However, Gongyu betrayed the sect and leaked the secret technique of the sect. Even death couldn't atone for his crime. Put up notices everywhere in the land of the 9 prefectures. Offer a reward for the capture of Gongyu. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse, Ting Qingshan said coldly. Yes. Yang Dong immediately went to carry out his orders. They all knew the importance of this matter. This was the first time the sect had betrayed the sect and leaked the secret technique. This was the beginning. If this punishment wasn't strict, the supreme sects wouldn't be deterred. In the future, all kinds of secret techniques would be leaked. In the land of the 9 prefectures, the branch of internal martial arts would be the same as the branch of Taoism. Many sects would appear. At that time, the Xing-Yi sect wouldn't even be able to maintain its current strength, let alone improve its strength. The Xing-Yi sect could only become the only sect of internal martial arts and become the holy land for the cultivators of the internal martial arts. Only then would all the cultivators of the internal martial arts yearn for the Xing-Yi sect. Only then could countless experts of the internal martial arts gather here. Within a short period of 17 years, the Xing-Yi sect had managed to form such a terrifying army, the Blood Wolf Army. The foundation and strength of the Xing-Yi sect was even stronger than that of Emperor Yu's Hall. It was because the Xing-Yi sect was the only branch of internal martial arts. All the disciples of the internal martial arts in the land of the 9 prefectures were here. How could the Xing-Yi sect not be powerful? In the evening, the 6-legged blade-like Qi brought the undying phoenix, Little Blue. The higher-ups of the Xing-Yi sect, as well as the elders, also knew about this. They were all shocked. While they were nervous, they were also looking forward to it. If the Xing-Yi sect could defeat Emperor Yu's Hall, it would be something to be proud of. The next morning, when the red sun rose from the east, over 10 people gathered in the East Flower Garden. They were all the higher-ups of the Xing-Yi sect. Today, Ting Qingshan wore a white cloak and carried the reincarnation spear with a red tassel on his back. Beside him was the huge divine bird, the undying phoenix, whose entire body was surrounded by flames. "Father, be careful," Hongwu said solemnly. Ting Qingshan looked at his son with a smile and patted Hongwu's head. His daughter was 17 years old, and his son was 15 years old. However, why did it feel like his son was 17 years old, and his daughter was 15 years old? "Father," Honglin frowned and said, "it's a pity that Uncle Mu is in Yong and County. It would be better if Uncle Mu went with you. Your Uncle Mu is in charge of the Gui Yuan sect. How could he leave so easily?" Ting Qingshan smiled. "Qingshan, be careful," Li Jun couldn't help but say. This time, their target was the oldest sect, Emperor Yu's Hall. Ting Qingshan smiled and looked at his wife. Then, he looked at his son and daughter. Then, he looked at the elders of the Xing-Yi sect and laughed loudly. "Everyone, Emperor Yu's Hall robbed and killed the caravan of the Hui Dojo. Now they stole the cultivation technique. This is the first time and it must be the last time. If the Xing-Yi sect wants to fight, we will fight with power and vigor. We will make sure that no other sects in the world dare to have any ideas about the Xing-Yi sect." Ting Qingshan's aura was fierce like a sharp spear. "Yes, we will beat them until they don't dare to have any ideas. Sect leader, you have to be careful." These elders spoke differently. After all, some of them were Ting Qingshan's elders. Under the gazes of the elders, Li Jun and his son and daughter, Ting Qingshan, who was dressed in a white cloak, carried the reincarnation spear on his back and leaped onto the back of the undying phoenix, Little Blue. Little Blue's wings trembled slightly, and it transformed into a fiery red flowing light that rapidly soared into the sky. Under the sunlight of the morning sun, it rapidly disappeared from everyone's sight. Ting Qingshan rode on the back of the undying phoenix, Little Blue, and entered the territory of Yuzhou. The wind howled in his ears, but Ting Qingshan overlooked the vast land below. Emperor Yu's Hall must have something powerful to rely on. This time, I'm going to knock on their door. It's time to reveal the trump card of Emperor Yu's Hall. Ting Qingshan smiled. All right. If I don't have a trump card with my current strength, I won't be able to defeat him. Just Lu Xia and Huang Tianqin alone would be too boring. I have cultivated diligently for 17 years. I haven't fought for 17 years. This time, it's time to see my strength after cultivating diligently for 17 years. I don't know. Their trump card is too powerful, forcing me to admit defeat to Emperor Yu's Hall. Or to make Emperor Yu's Hall lower its head under my long spear? Facing the most ancient Emperor Yu's Hall, Ting Qingshan wasn't confident. However, it was precisely because he wasn't confident that he could win that he was filled with pride. Soon, Emperor Yu's Hall. Yu, the undying phoenix, emitted a piercing screech. Then, it carried Ting Qingshan and dived down rapidly. 5 minutes passed. Do you want Ting Qingshan to fight until the heavens collapse and the earth crack? Then give me the monthly votes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.